Everyone, welcome back to the Let's Talk Movies podcast with me, John, and David, aka Shamrock Balls, and we are doing part 2 of David's favorite film, 1975's Jaws. And since we're up to part 2, we went through everything last week, so we're going to dive right into the film. But David, where did we leave off last week?
Yeah, John, we left off last week. Basically, we're just after Michael Brody has almost been killed by the shark. It has attacked the estuary victim, and the shark has just swam out of the pond, and Michael has been rescued from the pond and dragged out onto the beach. And we end with Brody looking out onto the sea with that amazing John Williams score playing. This realization that he's going to have to go and face this animal out on the ocean on the sharks' terms. What they've been doing so far hasn't been working. And I also feel as well, John, for me, this is like the halfway point of the movie. This to me feels like we're leaving all the land stuff behind and we're going into the hunt. How did you feel about that? Do you get that feeling, even though like this movie is a 3-act structure, okay? But this to me is like the halfway point between land and sea.
Yeah, it becomes a completely different movie when they get out in the sea. And it's funny because they spend basically the rest of the movie out on the orca. Whereas the whole first part of it, when we talked about it, we're going from setting to setting to setting, seeing all of Amity. We have 2 beach scenes, or is it 2 or 3? Like 2, well, I guess you can say 3 major beach scenes. So they're going from setting to setting, introducing us to these characters. And now it just becomes a 3-hander for the rest of the movie. And in my opinion, after watching them, I actually did watch them separately before each episode. I prefer the second half of the movie more, but it obviously doesn't work without the first.
Yeah, well, the whole first hour to me is just setting everything up. You know, it's to me like I always feel as if we're an hour in, but the movie hasn't even started yet. That's how I feel. I feel like and that's not taking anything away from the first half, because I think I had mentioned in our original podcast that we done about Jaws and Jaws 2 that when I was a kid, I absolutely just I love the whole movie, so we did, but I especially loved the second half, and there's no doubt about it. The second half of the movie is the better part, but the more older I get, the more I appreciate the first half. Like I was saying about, I love seeing the island and meeting all the characters and all the kind of like drama and conflict what's going on with all these different personalities. But as I say, everything's just building up to this, and it's just like the tension is raising and raising and raising, to the point where I think, as I say, you realize that Brody's going to have to take some drastic action to try and stop this animal now. What he's been doing hasn't been working up to this point, and the fact that now it's came right home to him. His own child was in danger. There's that kind of contrast of seeing Alex Kintner taken off the raft, and the fact that now his own son nearly became a victim of the shark. He really has to be proactive now.
Yeah, this is for him now. It's like, I have to face my fears and take the shark out, because now the danger is coming to my family. Even though he, throughout the entire first half of the film, has cared about everybody. But once it gets this close to him, he's like ready to go out in the water. And I think everybody at this point has seen enough that we got to deal with this head on.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. You hit the nail on the head there too. It's not just facing the shark. It's facing his fear of going out on the ocean, out on the water. You heard Alan Brody say that earlier in the movie. You know, Martin hates water. Martin hates boats. You know, he stays in his car when when we go from the ferry to the mainland. You know, where now he's going to have to go out in a wee rickety boat. And
even Bad Hat Harry knows about it.
yeah, we all heard about you, Chief.
I would be so mad. That still aggravates me every time I watch the movie Bad Hat Harry coming over and saying, like, you got some balls with coming up with that hat and making fun of me.
No, Shader Brody deals with it the only way he knows. You know, he's just like makes it known. You know, I don't like what you're saying. Even the way he moves his chair away from him, you know, it's some Bad Hat Harry. But can I just, sorry, John, go ahead.
I'm just saying, like, you got to really, like, come on, like, read the room, Harry. And then he gets offended when he makes fun of his hat. Yeah. It's like, come on, you don't know your hat's like that?
The hat was the least of his worries. He needed a bra.
Oh my God, that skin is about to fall off his body.
Yeah, but can I just say, and I don't think I touched this in the last episode, really, you know, the casting of Roy Scheider as Police Chief Martin Brody, probably my first movie hero. So this was a situation where Spielberg says that he was going after other actors, that the studio wanted a star, and I think I mentioned this in the first episode, but Spielberg felt as if he needed someone who wasn't too familiar with the audience, somebody who was an everyman that the audience could relate with. And Spielberg was going through these actors, and he couldn't find anybody. And he was at a party one night, and Roy Scheider was at the party, and Scheider says he's seen this young man sitting there looking rather glum, and he thought he needed cheered up. So Scheider went over and introduced himself, and he says he got talking to him, and Spielberg, he asked him, well, you look rather down. What's wrong with you? And Spielberg told him that, I'm making this movie. It's called Jaws, and and I'm having trouble casting the main lead, Police Chief Martin Brody. And apparently Scheider says he liked what he heard, and he says to him, how about me? And Spielberg went, actually, you'd be perfect. And Spielberg says he loved Roy from The French Connection, where he played a hard New York cop. So that's basically how Roy Scheider got cast in this movie.
Well, that's funny because the first two movies I'll always think of Roy Scheider in are this and The French Connection. And to a lesser extent, I believe he was in Marathon Man too. And he's always great, but he always plays, before this, he always plays tough guys. But yet, this is the movie where I was first introduced to him, was in Jaws.
Yeah, well, of course, same with me. And for to me, he'll always be Police Chief Martin Brody, and I love his performance in this. I love his performance in Jaws 2, and it's really strange. I never really seen any Roy Scheider movies until he died, and I'd seen The French Connection, and I'd never really seen anything else. And I realized that I needed to watch more movies, because I realized that I'm actually a very big fan of Roy Scheider, and I think that a lot of the movies he done from The French Connection right up until the late 80s, he done some really neat, good movies, John. So
he's also a great interview. Like, one thing when I was going back and like just for this, like listening to him speak, always seemed like a nice guy.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I said in the first episode about the fact that they said that you should never meet your heroes, and the guys that done the Shark Is Still Working said that his personality actually went beyond their expectations, how welcoming he was.
Yeah, they probably wouldn't met Richard Dreyfuss. It was probably the other way.
Yeah, yeah. So as I say, there's that. I just wanted to touch on as well, and also a few others, because we didn't really touch on the cast, and I felt as if we should have as well.
Well, I wanted to save a lot of the talk for these three guys, like together until we got here, because like as when they get on the boat, like you get to see the separation of all three of their personalities, and I think it comes down to the casting of all three of them and why they get their names on the posters anyway. Because in the first half, there's not much of Quint. There's a good amount of Hooper, because we get to see their relationship in Scheider, but we also have other characters that were being introduced and letting them get fleshed out. But in the second half of this movie, you're seeing these three guys, and you get to see the differences in all three of their personalities, and like the little infighting amongst each other, because they're nothing alike at all. And that all comes down to like the casting of all three actors come from very different backgrounds as well, especially of the time.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's what makes it great. That dynamic, that's so good about that dynamic. Now, I'm of the opinion that, as Spielberg says himself, that making a good movie, 50% of it's the casting, and some of the casting was kind of done by mistake, and what I mean is that he was going after other people and they weren't interested, so you have to go for another guy, or it's been suggested to him. And anybody that studies film will say that this is always the case. It's very rare you ever get your first choice. That's why they make a list of people that they would like for a movie. And that's also why when you hear the likes of like filmmakers, whether it's the writer of a movie or a director of a movie, saying when they get their first choice, they're over the moon, because they never expect to get their first choice. And that is the same with Robert Shaw. Robert Shaw, I believe that, again, they were going after different actors, going after like Sterling Hayden, and who else did they go after? I think they went after Charlton Heston, and then it was in the end, it was Richard Zanuck and David Brown who suggested to Spielberg, what about Robert Shaw? We just cast him in this thing. And Robert Shaw didn't want to do the part. Robert Shaw read the book, thought it was trash, and basically his wife was the one who read it. Either she read the book or read the script, I don't know, and suggested to him, like, you should do this. Now, Robert Shaw infamously had a lot of tax problems, and he was acting mainly for to make a living.
Nick Cage before Nick Cage.
Yeah, well, he also had like 9 or 10 kids as well. And
that'll cost some money.
Yeah, and that's the reason why he lived in Ireland, because when he was living in England, like the tax was so high. So he moved to Ireland because if you were considered an artist in Ireland, I don't think you were taxed as high, or you weren't taxed at all because you're an artist or something like that. So
Does
but
that
he
still
loved.
work? Can I come to Ireland as an artist?
Oh God, I don't know if it's still like that, John, down there
I'll move
anymore.
there right now.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but it was in the 70s. And of course, he fell in love with Ireland and he fell in love with the Irish people. And he lived and that's where he died. So Robert Shaw, kind of, as I say, I'm not going to say reluctantly done it. He's top class, but at first he was apprehensive about making this movie. And as I say, so it was the same with Dreyfus. I said in part one, Dreyfus didn't want to do it initially and then changed his mind. Shader did want to do it, but that's not who anybody had in mind as police chief Martin Brody until it was suggested to Spielberg. And then Robert Shaw again was kind of suggested by Zanuck and Brown. And Spielberg actually, him and the screenwriter Carl Gottlieb watched From Russia with Love. And I think that it watched The Sting. And when they watched those two movies, they went, actually, this guy would be good as Quint.
Now, was that your first experience? Like we this isn't our first Robert Shaw movie. This isn't our first Robert Shaw. This is our first Roy Scheider film, and we covered Matt Hooper. But when it comes to Robert Shaw, was this the first movie you ever saw him in, or did you see him in other things? Because he's always great. Like I just rewatched this thing recently, and I forgot how good he is in that. Even though like Paul Newman and Robert Redford, it's their movie. When Robert Shaw shows up, it's like that is perfect casting.
Yeah, he's so good in this, and he should have won the Oscar. But look, yes, it probably was, John. As I said in the first part, I seen this movie when I was 6, so I didn't know who Robert Shaw was, Roy Scheider, or Richard Dreyfuss. To me, they were Quint, Brody, and Hooper. And it wasn't until I got to my teenage years where I wanted to learn about the making of the movie, where I started researching the actors. And I remember like other movies coming on the television, and my dad saying to me, I was very young at the time, "Do you know who that is?" And it's like, "No," and he's like, "That's Quint from Jaws." I'm looking at him in other movies, and I might have been From Russia with Love. It might have been
nothing.
Yeah, it might have been Force 10 from Navarone. It might have been The Sting that was on the television. I can't remember, but I remember looking at this guy and thinking, that doesn't look like Quint. And but as I got older, John, I wanted to learn about these actors and the fact that there was that Irish connection with Robert Shaw, learning about the fact that he lived in the same island as me, which we live in a very, very small island. You know what I mean? It's you get drive to the west in a few hours, the west coast where he lived, and learning that, and then watching him in like From Russia with Love, and then The Sting, and the Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3, and the Deep, movies like that. I was at The Shark Is Broken, as I said in the first part a few weeks ago. I was saying to my brother who was with me that, Robert Shaw to me is like my second favorite actor of all time. I absolutely love the guy. And I could watch him in anything. And I watched a movie the other night, which is on YouTube. It's called The Caretaker. Very good movie. Came out in the early 60s. It also stars Donald Pleasance. And it's a strange film, but it stars a Robert Shaw around the time he done From Russia with Love. And it's a very interesting movie. It's based on a stage play, but this is the film version.
Oh, I love it when they do things like that. So it's a contained story then?
Yeah, pretty much. It takes place mainly in this one house.
It's The Caretaker. I'll watch it on YouTube then. I'll give that one a try.
Try it out. Donald Pleasance is absolutely brilliant in it as well.
Another great character actor of the time. What's sad about Robert Shaw, though, is he only dies 3 years after this.
Yeah.
So it's like, like we got Richard Dreyfuss is still alive. We got so much more films with him.
Yeah. And the sad thing is, John, as I said, when I was at The Shark Is Broken and watching the play, I said to my brother, I says to him, it's like I actually mentioned one of our podcasts where we talked about stars dying young and how they're immortalized, and how in our minds, in a lot of ways, a myth is built up around them because we never get to see them grow old. Mm-hmm. And Robert Shaw was 51 or 52 years of age when he died, which is young.
Very young. Way too young to die.
Way too young. And I thought about it when I come home from the play, but I said to my brother when I was there, seeing Ian Shaw's son play him, who is, almost a spitting image of him, I says, this is the closest that you're going to see to Robert Shaw in the flesh, because it is his own flesh and blood who's a button of him, right, on stage playing Quint. It's the closest you'll ever see to him in the flesh. And in some ways, it's kind of, you watch it and it's kind of like, this made of what have been like when they were filming the movie. But I come home and I was thinking about it. I was thinking about Robert Shaw, the actor, and I got quite melancholy about it because I would have loved to have seen what he would have done in his 60s and his 70s, the movies he would have made in the 1980s and the 1990s, And then I looked it up on Wiki, and I always remember Ridley Scott I knew it talked about him when Gladiator came out, and what he was referencing was, he says, paraphrasing here, Ridley Scott said something along the lines of, there's no more Robert Shaws in the world anymore. I think he was looking to cast him in the role of, what do you call your man?
Oh, the guy who died on set of Gladiator. What's his name?
Oliver Reed.
Robert Harris?
No, Oliver Reed. Oliver Reed.
Oh, Oliver Reed.
Richard Harris was
Harris
played the king, but we call him the Caesar or something at the start, didn't he? But I think he was even referencing Richard Harris as well. Those type of actors, there's no Robert Shaws left anymore, and it got me thinking. Imagine if Robert Shaw played the Oliver Reed part as a say as a 70-year-old man.
There was so many different roles he never got to play as an older man that he probably would have been great for, just because he knew how to deliver lines so well and had range. Like, he could change his voice and play different characters. We really did miss out on a lot. And think of like Ridley Scott, like he could have cast him in, like Alien. He might have worked as like one of those characters.
Yeah, I feel as if after Jaws, he kind of cased in a bit. He started making like these bigger movies for the money, and I don't blame him, because he was an aspiring writer. He always wanted to be a writer, and I think that niggled him. He was making movies to pay the bills when maybe he thought to himself, I want to be home writing novels, and he did write a few novels. Funny you should say it. There's in The Caretaker, he plays a guy who's very measured. He's not like Quint at all. He's very measured. He's very even keeled, and very softly spoken, and he does a monologue on that as well, and about something what happened to him. And when I was watching it, I was going, there's the seeds of the Indianapolis speech. I couldn't believe it. See these wee nuggets you find, John. As I keep saying to you about, I know it's not directly linked to Jaws, but as I keep saying to you, you think you know everything, and then I find this movie that I didn't even know existed, and then I seen that speech, and I went, there it is. That, to me, that was the seeds. But that probably just comes from his stage acting, goes all the way back to the stuff he used to do on stage.
Well, we'll get into the Indianapolis speech, because I think they do bring up that he was, because he was a writer, he wanted to take a shot at writing that speech himself too, since he was going to be the guy to deliver it. And that we talked about a little bit, because we didn't want to, we know about the making of this movie, but they had so much downtime that a lot of the stuff that's in this second half wouldn't have even existed if they didn't have that downtime, and if the shark had actually worked.
Yeah. And sorry, that's what I was going to say a wee bit earlier there, before I sidetracked myself with other stuff, was basically, yes, I believe that there's an awful lot of, is what I believe. I believe they had an awful lot of time on their hands to refine their characters. But I think there's an awful lot of these actors' character in the characters they're playing. I mean, because they were at sea for like, waiting for the shark to work, or the weather was bad, or, or they were setting the shot up. They had an awful lot of time to themselves. And apparently even at night, they were rewriting the script every single night before they went out the next day to film. And like the likes of like Robert Shaw and Richard Dreyfuss and Roy Scheider would go to Spielberg's log cabin where Carl Gottlieb was, and sometimes Verna Fields, the editor, and they would sit and they would discuss the next day's work, and they would give input. And so there is a lot of kind of improvisation here within the movie, and lines and wee gimmicks in the movie that made it into the movie from them guys just throwing ideas about, and Carl Gottlieb writing them down, and then typing them up that night and giving them the script first thing in the morning to go out and shoot that day. Apparently when Sid Sheinberg, who was the CEO, I've talked about Sid Sheinberg in our Spielberg episode, who was CEO of Universal Pictures, who greenlit Jaws, came out to visit the set. As a matter of fact, he says he was out to visit his wife, because his wife is Lorraine Gary, who plays Ellen Brody. And some people think that Spielberg hired her as an insurance policy, so he wouldn't be fired off the picture. But he says he hired her because he loved her work on some of the television movies she'd done. And I love Lorraine Gary in this. She's an integral part of the movie, I have to say. She brings a realism to the family. But anyway, so he was visiting, and he went to dinner with them. And after dinner, then they sat down and started typing up the script for the next day. And throwing ideas out, and he says he was horrified because you do not work like that when you're making a major motion picture.
No, that's not how you do it. And I mean, obviously, we talked about Spielberg eventually coming around and learning the lessons that he learned, but and would eventually end up basically mastering making a film under budget, under time by the time we get to Raiders of the Lost Ark. But here, a lot of it's not his fault, but I guess you're the director, you kind of have to brunt the amount of it's your fault at the end of the day because you're the boss kind of thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, the decision to film at sea
Well, that was
was
new.
that was new, but that was his decision,
But
and he had
it wouldn't be
support.
the same if he didn't. It
No,
really wouldn't be.
it wouldn't be. And then, of course, as he explains himself in the documentaries, just the folly of youth of saying, "Yeah, I can do that. We're going to go to sea," and not understanding how hazardous it's going to be, how bad the weather's going to be, and then you throw a big mechanical shark into the mix, which had an awful lot of problems because of the ocean. It wouldn't work. So you throw all that into the mix as well. But yeah, as you say, it wouldn't be the same.
No, it just would not. Like I love. I brought it up last week. I think I read it on our Spielberg show. I'm not too sure, but like when you watch movies like Vertigo, and it's like, yeah, I can see that they filmed this here, but then they clearly cut to like a pool, and they're swimming around. I'm like, it kind of takes you out a little bit. So I'm sure Steven Spielberg, growing up at that time and seeing movies like that, was like, if I ever film on the sea, if I ever have to film a movie on the ocean, I'm gonna probably try and take it out in the ocean because
Yeah.
it'll look more realistic. And I mean, it just wouldn't be the same. It just really wouldn't be.
It wouldn't be. Well, they screened movies before, in pre-production that were filmed like in studio tanks and the backlot and things like that. And it was just like, this looks too fake. We need to do this on the ocean, do it real. And, there was other people insisting, this is going to be too difficult. And he was like, well, I'm only going to do it if I do it out at sea. So, he was adamant and they backed him. And, the 55-day shoot, they thought they were going to be gone by June. It's still there in September.
That's crazy. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he probably got some angry calls, some people getting pissed at him. I'm sure he had to experience all the ups and downs of emotions because then eventually when it came out, it's like, well, maybe I was right.
Well, he says that he felt as if that when they came back, they had survived the war, and of course the success was the victory of the war, of the picture. That was the victory. But I mean, for years he had PTSD. He says that. He openly says that. He says, for years I had nightmares. He says, I would close my eyes and go to sleep. He says, and I'm on the third or fourth day of shooting, and I know I've got another 150 days to go. And he says, then I wake up, he says, sweating for years. And like even Joe Alves, I remember him saying, like, he says that when they came back from Martha's Vineyard, he says to California to, finish the movie, because there was like the kids seen the film and there was some underwater stuff that filmed off Catalina Island. Like the mood at the studio was, don't talk to the Jaws people. They all thought their careers were over, because they went over budget, over schedule. And I was like, nobody talked to them. And that's why they get rid of a lot of the props, because they thought the movie was going to be a turkey. They thought it was going to bomb, and they get rid of a lot of the props. And then
they got really lucky because a few years later, I forget the director's name, Michael something, but when you have a successful movie like The Deer Hunter, I'm forgetting the director's name. You make another movie a few years later, like Heaven's Gate, that had a similar production like this, where everything went wrong, but then the movie fails, and he never had a career again.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Listen, Spielberg said that. Spielberg said that when he was making Jaws, he thought his career was over. He thought that was
kill a career.
He actually says he was at a party one night during filming, and an actress came up there and said to him, I heard your career's over. That's the talk back in Hollywood. And he says he felt like he felt like just dying there and then. You threw out the filming. This is what was happening.
Like I would have I have anxiety as it is. I would be petrified. Like I'm working my ass off, but like it just nothing's going right, and I feel like I'm making a failure, and this is only my second feature film, and this is what I wanted to do my whole life, and it's gonna blow up in my face, and I'd be so worried because you don't know. Like hindsight's 2020. It's like, okay, we can look back now, but I imagine living in the moment and everything goes wrong every day.
Yeah, and then
you're pulling your hair out.
Yeah, well, Dreyfuss says
not you, but me.
That me, no. Well, listen, that's what happened to me. That's what I was making this movie, right? And it bombed. So that's why I'm here doing this podcast. No, but Dreyfuss says that he looked at his hands one day, and Spielberg had bit his nails all the way, every one of his nails all the way right back. So You know, he was under major pressure, but I think that Sid Sheinberg had his back, and I think that Zanuck and Brown also had his back. They told him just keep filming. Just the moment you stop filming is the moment they pull the plug on the picture. It's just keep filming, no matter what it is. Just keep shooting. And that's why he kept filming whatever he could, you know. But they got to the stage, as I said, this second part of our podcast, John, is when they go to sea. That basically all the land stuff, you know, they filmed pretty kind of went, no pun intended, swimmingly, you know. And they did have like cover shots they could do on land if it was bad weather at sea. But all that was done by this stage. So all that was left to film was like the sea stuff. So it was a case of just sitting about waiting and trying to get the shots and trying to get nice. Steven Spielberg actually storyboarded and Joe Alves storyboarded the end of the movie. So they knew what they had to get. And David Brown did say himself that a lot of the studio wanted to see what they were shooting, and they says they didn't give them everything. So they I believe Spielberg had like it all up in the room, all the different storyboards up in one of the rooms of what they had to go out and get for the day. And then also Verna feels as well, to her credit, like if she was editing while they were filming, so if they needed a pickup shot for something, she would advise them, look, you need a shot here, or you need a shot there, or that's missing. So they would go and they would try and get that as well. So it was very, very difficult for them to kind of do all this kind of stuff at sea. And then you throw, as you said, the personalities of Robert Shaw and Richard Dreyfuss and then Roy Scheider there as well into the mix of that. Jaws is my favorite movie first because it is my favorite movie to watch, but because of how legendary like the behind the scenes of it has become over the years, like I would love to be a fly on the wall during the making of this movie. If I had a time machine and I could just sit on a movie set, that would be the one I'd love to sit on. That would be so good. And listen, maybe it would just be boring. I don't know.
Yeah, well, they said 3 hours between takes, so you're just if you were a fly on the wall there, you see them shooting, then they all probably go read a book on their own somewhere. But I'd be like, this fucking sucks.
Yeah, and you know, and there's an amazing interview with Robert Shaw where he talks about there was a documentary that was filmed on the island. It's called like New England Our Way. I have a copy on it in VHS, but I think it might be on YouTube now. And I don't even know what that VHS is. I bought it years ago. And it's from 1974, 1970. Well, it was filmed in 1974, but I don't know if it was released on TV in 75 or whatever. And it's during the production of Jaws. And that's where you see, if you watch the Jaws documentaries, you'll see an awful lot of like that behind the scenes footage. And that's from that documentary, right? And they're interviewing Robert Shaw on the dockside. And I think that's where you see him with it. You can hear his very kind of, you know, proper accent, his very English, British accent, you know, his stage accent, not his Quint accent. And they talk about him. They said about, you know, all the, he says about, you know, waiting about all day just to get a shot. He actually talks about his death scene. He's talking about his death scene, how unpleasant he is having to slide towards this mechanical shark. And he says it's Jaws coming down with so much pressure. He says it's quite scary. And he says, and they asked him about his co-actors, and he just basically says, yeah, you know, he says, I know every detail of those two men sex slaves to the point where it's basically become quite boring. And they ask him, they said, well, how, it says, this says, well, what do you do during the day? And he says, what do you do? And then he says, well, Roy Scheider sunbathes. And he says, Richard Dreyfuss just talks. He just talks and talks and talks. And he says, and of course, I do like to drink. He says, I like a few drinks. First of all, they say to him something like, you know, how do you survive the day? And he says, well, I like scotch and vodka. And but yeah, it's a very good. They're really sitting in his Quint outfit. You know, he's got the cap on. He's got the green jacket. You know, and
I've seen that interview. I watched that last, and again, it's just so surprising to see him in that, but not talking like Quint.
Yeah, it's very good.
But he's good at his job. That's what it is. You got to get in the character.
Yeah. So it must get to the point where it's like, you know, when you work with people, you know, 8 hours a day, and there must be just long periods. If you're out at sea with the same people every day and you're not getting the shots, or you're not getting you're not doing the acting, the part of the scenes. I mean, film sets in general are probably very laborious and boring. You know, you spend all day to get maybe 10 seconds of film, or, you know, or 5 minutes of, not even 5 minutes of film. But the whole thing is that if you're sitting waiting at sea, waiting for a shot, must get this stage where there is long silences, where there's nothing to talk about anymore.
You've run out of things to discuss, especially like, you know, nowadays, you know, we put our heads in the cell phones. In the 70s, that wasn't happening. You guys just had to enjoy each other's company and hope you had a magazine that you hadn't finished yet.
Yeah. books, magazines. Maybe you've got a radio, playing games. Probably I did read that some of them would face you off the side and see what they could catch and things like that. So
Yeah, whatever gets you through the day. I get that. We are very, very fortunate nowadays when it comes to entertainment. I would say we have too much, actually. It kind of can become daunting to try and watch or read everything.
well,
It's impossible.
listen, the world changes, John, and we all understand this because when our parents were growing up, it's completely different than when we were growing up. And now that our kids are growing up or whatever, my kids growing up, whatever, that's completely different to when I was growing up. But I miss things like, for example, like you say, you said there's a lot more entertainment now, but the problem is with that, you become isolated because, kids can go to their room and watch their phones or, like we said on one of our podcasts, you go on a bus and everybody's on their phone. Nobody's making conversation anymore. Or if there's a big movie on, the family used to get around the television and watch it together. Now it's all that's kind of lost, I think.
Yeah, we did kind of. I feel like, I mean, the world's just changing. We did lose a lot of the family dynamic. I'm, I don't want to bring down the podcast, but I do think that it's heading towards a more of a negative than a positive as we go into the future.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, definitely.
But let's dive into the next scene of the movie.
Let's dive into the next scene of the movie. So Brody looks out into the sea, and then we cut to the hospital where, Michael's being taken out. We see Brody, we see Ellen, and they're waiting at a door. The door opens, and Michael's being brought out on a stretcher, and the nurse tells them that it's a mild shock, and he can go home in the morning. So that's when Brody sees the mirror enter the hospital. And this is what I like. This is where you see the bit of the tough Roy Scheider briefly. He asks Ellen to bring Sean home. He's holding Sean. And she says, back to New York. So she's thinking that they're going to leave.
She probably wants to at this point. She's like, I've had enough too. So, but he's like, no, our house.
Yeah, he's like, no home here. And she walks off. And then I love that how the mirror kind of wanders in, kind of like all flustered and all. And walks to the desk, but then Brody just turns, see that stare that Brody gives him, and he walks up to him, but the mirror's all apologetic. I'm sorry, I'm truly sorry. And he's like, you got a pen, Larry? He's like, a what? He's like, a what? He's like, a pen, I like how he grabs him by the arm, John, and brings him to like a cubicle.
Yeah,
pulls him privately. Talk to him privately. And he's like, because you're going to do what you do best. You're going to sign this contract, or we're going to hire Quint to kill the shark. And then you see the mirror kind of squirming and trying to like find some common ground with Brody by saying to him, Martin, my kids were on that beach too.
Yeah, I mean, now he's feeling guilty, and that's what she's trying to justify in his head what he did because it could have been avoided. How many times were you warned? You'd put the safety second behind making money for the season, and it blew up in your face, and now you feel guilty about it. Yeah, he's trying to be like, my kids were out there too. I had the best of intentions in mind. You didn't.
It's typical of the mirror because we said in part one where when Mrs. Kittner slaps Brody and he's like, I'm sorry, Martin, she's wrong. Not even like, Martin, this is my fault. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's kind of like he's trying to like lump himself in with Brody as if he can empathize with him. Kind of like, my kids were on that beach too, but yeah, your kid didn't nearly die, and you're the one that wanted to open the beaches. He was the one that wanted to actually close the beaches and save lives, even though Brody directed him into the pond thinking the shark wouldn't go in there. But even the mirror's thinking August, and he's like, August, you're the mayor of Shark City. The cat's out of the bag now. Everybody knows. He says, you're the one that wanted the beaches open, or everybody thinks you want the beaches open. So he says about my kids were on that beach too, and Brody is assertive and says to him, "Sign it, Larry." So he signs it, and I love how at this stage Brody's just trying to get him to do the right thing. He forced him, but when he signs it, do you see the look that Brody gives him? He kind of like looks him up and down, as if piece of shit.
He is a piece of shit. That's how I would look at him too, because people are dead because of you, and you get to just go on with your day. And you're trying to just, rest your conscience now, so you can go to sleep tonight.
Yeah, exactly. And there's there's another wee bit of dialogue in there that I might have missed there about him saying about August and stuff. But no, I don't think I did miss anything there, just if there's anything important. But yeah, and I love that how he pulls the guardrail back and the curtains, and Brody, he struts through the hospital. He's a man on the Mason now. It's Ace Ventura walk. And
you would have done the head thing the whole time. I would have been like,
got a contract, people. And I'm hiring Quint, people. Shouting out all over the hospital. But yeah, he struts down. He means business now. You can tell Brody's really assured of himself. Now we're going to do this. And I love how you hear Quint's voice coming through before it cuts to the next scene. It's like $10,000, few $1,000 a day, whether catch him or not. And it's like, you got it. So now the terms have changed. Quint has got him where he wants him, right? And he comes through the door, and I love this, the way Brody comes walking through, and he's like, get the mirror off my back, so I don't have no more of this zoning crap. And Brody's like, you got that. But he takes his glasses off, and he rubs his eyes, and he looks, and I love that, the way you see all the shark jaws just all the way around his shack. You know, this man means business. You know, we've never seen anything like this before. He knows how to catch sharks.
It's what he does, and we'll find out why he has such a vendetta against them pretty soon.
Yeah, he is the expert. Okay, he's 1 case of Ipecac brandy. You buy the lunch, and Brody's like 2 cases, and he's like, you get dinner when you get back. And he walks out. He's like, he says, champagne, Patty de Poor, Iranian caviar, and don't forget to call the TV. So he's got a big list of demands that he wants for catching his shark. It's never ending. But I love how you see even Hooper comes in. And even he is like got a grin on his face, just seeing all the shark jaws around the place. And I love how Quint goes across and he pours a drink, and it's like a wee clear shot glass. And he says, try this, Chief. Made it myself. Pretty good stuff. And Brody's like, thanks. He's like, what the fuck is this? It's like, and it's like smoking, you know, but he drinks it a wee bit of it and then spits it out. I love that. And you see Quinty's boiling shark jaws. And he's rambling on about not being able to get a good man for under 50. They're all gone these 35 years. Now, before Brody introduces Hooper to Quint, I must point out that Quint did have a mate. Okay, you see him earlier on in the scene where he scrapes his fingernails down the blackboard, and there's a deleted scene where this guy actually tells Quint that he's not going out with him on the orca to help him catch the shark. He tells Quint that he's like, I'm not going after that crazy shark. And Quint says to him, why, you miserable son of a bitch? He says to him, you pack your bags. He says to him, so you pack your bags, you're on the beach. So that's why he doesn't have a mate. That's why he needs someone to go with him. Okay, so this is Brody is chartering Quint's boat, the orca, to catch the shark. So that's why Brody's going. And he then wants, obviously, I think Hooper wants to go for his own reasons, because Hooper knows this is a massive fish, and I think he wants to be involved. What do you think?
That's exactly what I think Hooper's motivation is that because of like what his career interests are, because we know that in the first part we see he comes from money and he can do whatever the hell he wants, but he loves and has an interest in sharks. So for him, I think his reasoning for wanting to go out there is, you know, maybe a little bit for his friendship with Brody that he's kind of built up over this short amount of time. Wants to be there to help him because I don't think he, you know, trusts Quint too much, but also I think selfishly he wants to see what the shark is. And obviously at this point they're all ignorant to what the shark actually is. Yes. So I think that they think that they're going to catch the shark pretty simply. The way they're planning to come home, all of them. Hooper just thinks, I just want to get on this boat, get this shark. I don't think it's going to be too difficult, and we're going to go out there and get this shark for ourselves. And I just want to get on.
And as we go on, I'll touch on a few wee bits and things when they get out there, mate, as well, to qualify what you're saying. Because at this stage, I think, because you see Hooper in the montage scene saying, there's no need for me to go to Brisbane when I've got a great white shark right here. So he is fascinated himself by this particular shark. But you're right. I think they maybe think it's 16, 17, 18 feet long. I don't think they believe it's any bigger than that. So so he wants to stay. Yes, and I think you're right. I think he's built up a rapport with Brody. He empathizes with the situation, and he wants to see it through. He wants to see it through to the end. He wants to see the conclusion. So then, obviously, Brody says, "This is Bad Hooper," and Quint's like, "I know who he is." And he's like, I crewed 3 trans packs. And he's like, transplants? And anyway, so this begins the taunting of Hooper, where he's like, when Hooper talks about some of the charters or the boats he's been out on, America's Cup Trial, and he's like, Mr. Hooper, I'm not talking about pleasure boating or day sailing. I'm talking about working for a living. I'm talking about sharking. So anyway, so he starts taunting him, and he says to him, well, Hooper pokes him back and says, I'm not talking about hooking some poor dogfish or sand shark. I'm talking about finding a great white, which is funny because there's a big giant great white shark jaw in the window. But anyway, and he says to him, tie me a sheep shank. So he's testing Hooper. Hooper doesn't understand what he's doing, but he's testing him at the minute. And he's like, well, I haven't had to pass basic seamanship for a long time, you know? So he says, didn't know how short you wanted, how's that? And Quint is insulted by that remark. So he says to him, give me your hands. And he grabs his hands and gives him a spiel about catching white sharks. And then he looks at his hands and says to him, you've got city hands, Mr. Hooper. You've been counting money all your life. So I love this, how like this is the start now. This is the start of their relationship. And even Brody's like, he takes his glasses off and watches what's going on here. And Hooper's like, I don't want any of this, working class hero crap. So next thing Brody says to him, you're not going to do this aboard the ship, are you, Mr. Quint? And he's like, well, maybe I should just go alone. And he says, well, it's my charter. It's my party. And he says, I'll take him for ballast, Chief. I love how there's like a wee smirk. Richard Davis kind of smirks, because it's a joke. He's having a dig at him. I'll take him for ballast just to steady the ship. He's dead wood. He's a dead weight. I'll bring him with us. And he's like, you got him.
Hey, whatever he got on the ship. But I did kind of think that Quint was kind of like, and I get that from somebody who's been doing this their whole life. They don't want to have somebody who's essentially trained by the book compared to me, who's been through hell and back to be good at what I do. This guy wants to get on board and he wants to be my even, essentially, like essentially even with me in skill. I don't think so. He's just basically trying to make him look weak in front of Brody and be like, you don't know what I'm doing. That's why he pulls his hands out and everything like that. Also, just want to make one quick note. I love Quint's sweater.
Oh yeah, that's a fisherman's sweater.
Oh yeah, fisherman sweater, 100%. Yeah. The hat, his whole outfit just like looks like somebody who's been through it. He's a worn down. He's not trying to impress anybody anymore. He is who he is. Appreciate him for what he is, and that's it.
That's what I love about this, and it pains me the older I get. And I know it shouldn't, because we touched on this in the Spielberg episode about Oscars and awards. Like Robert Shaw was like 47 or 48 when he made this movie. That's not old. That's only like 6 years older than me right now, right? Mm-hmm. Yet he looks a lot older. And Robert Shaw, okay, hard drinker, different times, but he made himself up to look like this. 100% he made himself up to look this. If you look at Robert Shaw before this movie and after this movie, he looks a hell of a lot younger. Now, he may have dyed his hair and maybe he was balding, but I definitely think that he really, in my opinion, embodied this character for this movie.
100%. The Sting is only 2 years before this. You wouldn't think that those are the same looking guys. He's got jet black hair in the Sting.
Yeah. Well, I would advise you to watch, if you haven't seen it, John. It's one I want to do in the pod at some stage. I've been thinking about it for a while. Real great summer movie, The Deep, which came out 2 years after this, and he looks younger than what he did in this.
That's funny. I haven't seen The Deep, actually. It's been one that I've been meaning to watch because I know a lot of people talk about that movie. That's one of the better 70s movies.
Yeah, but that's one of the that's a based on a Peter Bansley novel. That's the novel he done after Jaws. It also stars Lou Gossett Jr., Nick Nolte, Jacqueline Bassett, and it has a score by John Barry.
Oh, this is right up your alley for sure. Then it's got a lot of your favorites.
Brilliant film. I always remember watching that when I was a kid. It's a great one as well. But yeah, there's a power struggle going on here. Quint right away he says, I know who he is. So I don't know if he knew of Hooper before he arrived or he done his research after he arrived at the island. But Hooper is, he's an academic. I think Quint looks at Hooper as the type of person that only has experience through textbook, not through experience. And he doesn't want a guy coming in here who's only read about things in a book or is only, especially a young guy, and telling him his business, as he mentions later on. Quint sees that himself, as you say, as superior to Hooper because he has all this experience with sharks. And Hooper, he probably just sees, as you say, as a rich guy who's came along and just knows everything through a book. So we cut to the next scene, and this is when they're loading the Orca, and Quint's coming down the spiral steps down towards the dock where the Orca is. And I love how he's reading off the list of the stuff that he needs. And there's Hooper starting there in his wee kind of like bucket hat. And I don't know who them guys are, why he's getting that stuff off him, that fishing stuff off him. I don't know who they are. He's like, I don't know if they're from Woods Hole or the Oceanographic Institute have come down to meet him and bring his stuff. And Quint stops and looks at him and says to him, what are you? Some kind of half-ass astronaut? And I love...
They laugh there. They kind of like laugh there, like a little fun moment. Like at least it's not. It doesn't feel like a dig that much at that moment.
Oh well, I just think I think 100% it's a dig. It's a joke with a jag, right?
Okay, that's a good way to put it. Like it's still like a backhanded, but he still kind of meant it a little lighthearted while still kind of like elbowing on the way back.
Yeah, but the thing is, Richard Dreyfuss to me or Hooper laughs it off. He knows he's having a go at him But rather than get annoyed with him, because he's going to have to go out to sea with this guy, and they've only just met each other, really, he just kind of like, Richard Davis just kind of smiles at him. But I see the laugh that Robert Shaw does as he laughs to the boat.
Yeah.
Laughing his head off. It reminds me like Biff Tannen or something. So, yeah. And the next thing is then Hooper then kind of like he wheels his cage over to the orca, and then again Quint turns and he's like, Jesus H. Christ. When I was a boy, every little squirt wanted to be a harpooner or a sword fisherman. What do you got here? Portable shark, a monkey cage, anti-shark cage. And that's where he gives this great speech about cage goes in the water, you go in the water, sharks in the water. Yeah. And that's the first time we hear farewell and adieu to you fair Spanish ladies. And I love that how Richard Davis just stands kind of like laughing at him going,
yeah. Well, he probably thinks he's like, all right, I can't say that, but this guy's off, right? Like,
yeah. And I just love how excited Quint is at this stage because he's getting all his demands met, and this is just another job for him. It's like, yeah, this is another job for me. I'm going to make a fucking fortune off this shark. I'm going to make more money off a shark than any shark I've ever made money off before. And it's going to be great. And I'm going to be the guy to do it. And I'm going to be a hero. And he's just so excited. That's why he's signing. He's making jokes. He's making jobs and to pay at people. And the anti-shark cage. Now, in the novel, as we said earlier, Hooper brings the cage with him because he wants to study the shark. He brings his camera with him and wants to study it. And I think that originally it's been years since I've read the novel, John, but I think in the novel, Quint originally refuses to let him bring the cage on board and is basically like, look, what are you doing? No, he's like, you're not putting that thing in my boat. We're catching the shark. What are you doing? And I think in the end, I think that Hooper actually pays him to bring it on board with him.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. I'm actually itching to read that book again. I should read it again.
Perfect time of the year for it.
100%, man. So there you go. What you were saying earlier on about studying the shark. So in this movie, it's like it's not explained why he's bringing the cage with him. It's just like that's an anti-shark cage, and he brings it with him. He's like, you go in the cage goes in the water, sharks in the water are sharks. So it's not really explained why he's bringing it with him. So yeah, then Ellen enters the frame. This is the last time we see Ellen Brody, and I love this wee scene between her and Martin Brody as they're approaching the orca, and she's kind of like packed his bag for him. And it's like, extra pair of glasses in your socks and all this. And she's like, what's the matter with Quint? And he's like, colorful, isn't he? And she's like, he scares me, with good reason. And he says, as I said in our first part, the way he never, ever gets anything fixed because he's so busy. He's like, don't use the fireplace in the den because I haven't fixed the fluid yet, which is very dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And I love how she says, like, what am I going to tell the kids?
That's a good line,
isn't it? And he just says, tell him I'm going fishing.
That's a great line. I love that. I mean, it feels like it's such a courageous line from him. Like he's finally got the courage to go out there and like, I don't know if he's thinking like his kids will be proud of him or if like he's just thinking like, it's a nice thing to say to my wife at the time.
Yeah. I think he's just trying to assure her that everything's going to be okay. I'm only going fishing. It's a fishing trip. Don't worry about it. I think it's more for her than the kids.
Okay.
Tell him I'm going fishing. It's only a fish, and they give this really brilliant, lovely embrace. I love that scene. I love that wee touch in this movie. That's what I love about this film. But then you hear Quint in the background shouting, "Break it up, will you, Chief? Daylight's wasting." And then he's giving them terms about the boat. But I love how when Brody kind of wanders down to the boat, you can tell, he's reluctantly going. And he's like, see, you got your rubbers. And then he looks at Alan Brody. Quint looks at Alan Brody and then says the wee ditty about here lies the body of Mary Lee, died at the age of 103. For 15 years, she kept her virginity. A bad record to this vicinity.
Mm-hmm.
And that Robert Shaw actually got that from a tombstone in Ireland.
Yeah, I saw Steven Spielberg talking about that, which actually I took from this story. I was like, this is just showing how smart Steven Spielberg is, because apparently he went up to Quint after they shot that because he I believe he improvised that, and Steven Spielberg went up to him like, where's that from? Just in case we have to get the rights to it or something like that. And, we don't get in trouble. He's like, I saw that on a tombstone in Ireland. Like, he's like, don't worry about getting the rights to it or something like that. I'm like, I found that more interesting from Steven Spielberg's perspective to go in his head. Like, oh, I don't want to get in trouble. Let me go figure out where this is from.
Yeah, exactly. That's brilliant. So, I mean, but it must be in your head, because if you're doing things like a farewell on a duty for Spanish ladies and, show me the way to go home. So they probably had to get the rights to kind of seen that in the movie. What was it I was read recently, and it basically said about there was something in a movie and they shot it 2 different ways because they didn't know if they were going to get the rights to the one they wanted to use. I can't
The
remember what it was.
Ghostbusters,
Ghostbusters, yeah.
because they
It
did
was
that with.
the name Ghostbusters. Yeah,
Mhm. Yep,
that's
they
right.
couldn't. They had to shoot it with different signs and different uniforms, and you can actually see the pictures online. I forget what the other name was. It wasn't Ghost
It's-
something.
I do know the
Catchers.
name. Ghost Catchers, yeah. It might be
It
Ghost
didn't roll
Catchers.
off the tongue as both. Like they were planning on doing Ghostbusters, but they didn't have the rights to the name yet. They thought they were going to get them. That's why they were shooting both. But just in case they didn't,
Yeah, because Ghostbusters was the name of a cartoon that was out in the 70s, which had
yep,
nothing to do with the movie they were making. Yeah, that's what
yep.
it was, John.
Musical rights are a big deal. I mean, if you go back and sometimes if a movie or TV show doesn't get the rights back to a certain song, they'll replace it in the movie, and it's very distracting. Actually, we were talking about Wayne's World before we started. They could never get the rights to Stairway to Heaven. If you go back and watch it, that scene, Wayne never strums Stairway to Heaven until like the most recent 4K release.
Right, okay. I know, because I've got the DVDs. Must check that out. But another one as well is Neighbor on Elm Street 3, the song at the start. It was different on the VHS release
Really?
than the theatrical release, and I'm not sure if it's been restored. It might have been restored to the DVDs and Blu-rays. I'm not sure.
These guys want their money. You got to pay them.
Exactly. I hope that person that's related to the person that's buried under the Mary Lee. I hope anybody's related to them, and you'll be getting 50 years of royalties.
103. She probably didn't have much family around.
Well, she lost her virginity at 15, so.
Spent most of her life not a virgin.
But the thing about that is, like, not a bad record for this vicinity. So.
All right, good for her.
But yeah, so of course you see, I love that as well. Quint's still cackling and throwing out one-liners. He's like, if you see a shark, Hooper, swallow. And you see Alan Brody run off crying, and that's the last you see of Alan Brody. Not the last you hear of her, but it is the last you see of her. And I have to say, like, this next shot of this movie, I absolutely love this. It's up on Quint's shack. It's the great white shark jaw in the window. The camera's slowly panning in. You can see I don't know what that's called, like that waterway in Martha's Vineyard where it brings you out to the sea. I know it's called Gay's Head. I think I don't know. And the old name was Iguana or something like that. Iguana? I think it's something like that anyway. But you could just see the orca actually slowly going out on its mission. And that John Williams music playing is absolutely brilliant.
This is a great scene. I love this scene. Doesn't that kick into like them putting chum down?
Yeah. So then, but also that part of that scene as well. I love how then it cuts to like Brody's perspective behind his shoulder as he's watching, as he's moving away from shore. And then it cuts to like a side shot of them just sailing out, and the music kind of changes. It changes. It goes from this kind of like bravado type music into this kind of like cheerful music. And I love that Quint 9 where he says about he says to Brody, if they don't like you going out, they'll love you coming in. And yes, it does. It then fades into the bloody sea, and it pans up, and there's Brody chumming over the line, or chumming over the stern of the boat, and he asks who's driving the boat, and Quint says nobody, the tide. But then Quint starts to taunt Hooper. Because he says about one time I caught a 16-footer off Montauk, had to stick 2 barrels in him, 2 to weigh him down to bring him up. And then he says, God damn, these kids these days, they burn out everything: sonar, radar, electric toothbrushes. I love where he goes, electric toothbrushes. But he's having a dig at Hooper, because Hooper's sitting with this fucking device, putting it in the water. And then he cracks open a beer, and he's kind of like, Jesus H. Christ, Chief, best drop another chum marker. But you see Hooper, kid. Do you ever notice if you watch Hooper looks at him and is just shaking his head like, this guy, right? And then that's what I love it. He drinks the beer can, right? He downs the beer and crushes it. And I love how he kind of looks at Hooper with that wee bit of beer fuzz on his moustache, and kind of goes, and then Hooper looks back with the paper cup and crushes it.
If they're probably drinking like a cup of coffee or tea or something like that.
Yeah. And I just love how Richard Davis crushes it and goes like that with it.
Yep, and just lets it go. Like, yeah.
Lets it go, yeah.
I love that, because they're always just trying to one up each other, because like Hooper's just, they can't really take that. Quint's always just like looking down on him the whole time.
Yeah, but I just love how that's Quint like having a dig at him, like, burning out these sonars and all, he's old school. He's using chum, you know, and dead fish guts and oil, and he's using like this tracker thing in the water, you know. And I just love that look, as I say, when he gives to him when he drinks the beer. He's like, you know. And then Brody pulls the wrong lane, and the cage falls, and the scuba tanks roll down. And then, of course, this is setting up the payoff, foreshadowing the ending of the movie. And this is the first time we kind of see Hooper like explode at Brody, and he's kind of like, yeah, he's like, this is compressed air, and Brody's like, what the hell kind of a nut was that? And he's like, you pulled the wrong one, you know. And he tells him, you screw him with these tanks, they're going to blow up.
Yeah, and this is kind of weird. I always felt like those two were very close, so I always kind of think it's weird when he kind of blows up, and I think it's because they could have died, and that's why he kind of gets a little bit upset. Or it's him trying to prove to Quint that he knows what he's doing as well, and it kind of like took it out on the weaker guy.
Possibly. I always read it that it was that because it was a major mistake, you know.
That's fair.
Yeah, because it could, like you say, it could have exploded, you know. But kind of like in hindsight, you go to yourself, well, like, why would Brody know? You know,
how could he? He's not even a sailor. This guy never goes out on the water. Why is he going to know which line to pull?
Yeah, exactly. But this kind of gives us the setup for later and the exposition of, you know, you screw him, these tanks are going to blow up. And of course, Quint is kind of like, you know, that's real fine, expensive gear you brought out here, Mr. Hooper. Don't know what that bastard shark's going to do with it. Might need it, I suppose. Seymour need a rocking chair one time. And I love how he says, Seymour need a rocking chair one time. Jaws eats the boat.
That boat right there, yeah. A rocking chair. But I'm still thinking in my head, a fucking rocking chair is pretty big.
Yeah, exactly. So they're kind of thinking like, he's like, Seymour need a rocking chair one time. And it's like, yeah, you know, you've seen ones eat a, you know, maybe like a 14, 15 footer eat a rocking chair, you know. And but what I love this part here, and this is what I'm saying all about the subtle differences in the character. Brody's in the foreground and Quint's in the background now, and Hooper's sorting the scuba tank out. And I love how Quint kind of leans over to him and says to him, "Hey, Chiefy, next time you just ask me which line to pull, right?"
Do you think he's being genuine, or you think he's trying to get one over on him?
I think he's being genuine. He's not trying to get one over on Brody. What he's saying to Brody is that I don't want him getting one over on you. So in other words, you ask me which lane to pull. So he can't do what he just did because Quint obviously didn't like the fact that he was getting above his station. Again, that goes back to what you say, John. Hooper probably knows stuff that Quint doesn't know about the scuba tanks and the cage, and he's like, this is compressed air, it'll blow up, and he's just like, it's real fine, expensive gear you've brought out here, you know. Whereas Quint's using fucking oil plastic barrels and ropes.
Yeah, and it's got like the whole fishing setup and everything. Like, but he's like, it's worked for me, and like this is like the new guy coming in with his high tech, but he doesn't really know exactly how to do what I do. So he's like, come ask me, I'll help you out, and like, you know, we'll do that. I just also thought, you know, Quint knows about Brody because he lives in the town with him, and like, you know, he's not comfortable out here as it is. He's just kind of out here doing his job. He's a nice guy, you know, kind of like, just ask me, I'll help you out. Don't worry about it. Don't listen to that. You don't have to hear his shit.
Yeah, well, there could be that as well. And it's kind of like, you know, I think that Quint sees Brody kind of as an ally as well, because, okay, it is his charter, but he's also the chief of police.
And he fought for him to do it. He's like, I want him to do it.
Yeah, but the thing that makes me think Quint's intentions isn't about Brody per se is because Brody knows. Because Brody has struck up a friendship with Hooper, even though Hooper exploded at him. Brody's hooked up a friendship with Hooper. When Quint says that to him, Brody turns and kind of is like, when he turns, he's like, you know, I don't want to be stuck in the middle of you two. He knows, he's like, I don't want to be stuck in the middle here between you two. And and also, as you say as well, Brody, at this stage, Brody as well is completely, as they say, a fish out of water. You know, these two guys are used to doing this type of work out at sea, whether or not it's fishing for Quint and killing sharks, or whether or not it's Hooper doing research for sharks. This is their environment. Being on the land's not really their environment. And being on this is not Brody's environment at all. He's totally alien. So he is kind of like at the bottom of the packing order here. You know, he's just taking the orders. He's just observing. And as I say, that's probably why he takes the bollocking off Hooper in such good stead. You know, he didn't bite back. He just kind of went, I fucked up, made a mistake.
Yeah, exactly. And then, you know, it's just showing more of the power dynamic between the three of them and how it's going to work out for them on the water.
Yeah, and then of course we fade to the next scene where they're kind of separated. Have you noticed as the scene goes along, they start to separate? Because this is what I love about this. When you think about it, when you've watched it as many times as I have, and I didn't realize this, John, until I was watching the second half of the movie again last night for the pod. Like every scene from when they leave Amity, every scene is a fade until like the climax of the movie. Because it's the editor showing, time passing and how mundane it is. And that's what I like about this movie as well, is that as much as I love the sequels, like when these guys go out at sea, it's not like they just go out to sea and there's the shark, which was happens in the other movies. Do you know what I mean? They're trying to find it. They can't find it. They're having to hunt it down. Maybe the shark has specific places it goes, and Quint is trying to establish where it is, with the chum and everything else. And of course, when they fade and Hooper and Brody's learning how to tie the knot, and Quint is showing him, little brown eel goes into the cave, goes out of the hole. Hooper's sitting up on the bridge, and he's working on another one of his bloody devices. And he seems to smell something in the air. He's kind of like I don't know what he's smelling, but you see Quint kind of looking around at him like, what's he doing? Keep my eye on you, boy. And Brody can't tat, and he's kind of like, not too good, is it, Chief? One more time,
It does look like it'd be hard to do. I wouldn't be able to tie those knots.
Yeah, so he's just passing time. They're just sitting there, they're waiting about, they're passing time, and then of course you start to get the tug on the line from Quint. And I like this scene. It's very intense. Well, it builds the suspense, so it does. Because what I like about it, John, is that Quint, being the experienced fisherman, he notices that something's got it, right? And he slowly doesn't make any moves, doesn't shout, doesn't say, right, we've got something. He just hooks himself in very slowly, braces himself, and just as Brody gets the net, hey, I got it. Whatever's got that line just fucking runs. And that gets everybody's attention. And of course, Hooper, not being an experienced shark killer or shark hunter, he's like, Hooper, reverse her, taking a hell of a lot of line. So he gets him to reverse the boat, and then turns around and screams at him, Hooper, starboard, ain't you watching it? So as if Hooper would know what to do. So he's having to direct Hooper how to drive the boat. Of course, Quint is struggling to reel in whatever this thing is at the end of the lane. Now, Quint believes it's the shark, it's Bruce, it's Jaws. Hooper says that it's not a shark, and he's like, you might be a big Yahoo in the lab, but out here you're just supercargo. And I also think as well, this is very good, John, of foreshadowing the gloves. Nobody ever points this out. He says, then put your gloves on. Put your gloves on, both of you.
You're right. I guess that is foreshadowing. I never did think about it like that. I was just thinking about it in the moment.
So he's convinced it's not the shark. Quint convinced it is. He then gets out of the chair, gives Brody the rod, and asks Hooper to give him a hand, and he goes around to lift a big fuck off fishing hook. What do you think? Is this the shark?
I always didn't think so because the shark's too big, and I don't think they'd be able to handle it like this. But I guess I could be wrong on that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's something I've never really seeked out the answer for. I've seen the questions over the years. It's something that I'm not even 100% sure on. The only thing is that when Hooper's, I don't know what I don't know if he's going to try and pull it up. I don't know what Hooper's trying to do there, because I'm not a fisherman myself. But the line snaps and they fall back, and then by that time Quint comes around and he says to him, because he thinks it's a game fish, and he says, Quint says to him, a marlin, stingray, and he says, bit through that piano wire. Don't tell me my business again. So he's convinced that the only thing that could bite through the piano wire was a large shark.
Yeah, well, I guess it could be there are other sharks out in the water. We know that. They caught a tiger shark the other day. So it could just be a different shark, but I and that's always kind of what I thought, because when we finally do get the reveal of the shark and it's so much bigger, I just can't imagine that being the one pulling him along.
Yeah, no, exactly. I don't know what I think. Sometimes for a long time I thought it wasn't the shark. I thought Hooper's right, it's not. Quint's mistaken because of the size of the shark when we do see it. But then when Quint says about bit through a piano wire, so I don't know. He says to him, Quint, that doesn't prove a damn thing. And I love this line where he says to him, it proves one thing, Mr. Hooper. It proves that you wealthy college boys don't have the education enough to admit that you're wrong.
Or or he could be the one too stubborn to admit he's wrong.
Yeah, well, they're like you say, they're both pretty stubborn at this stage. Nobody's backing down, and I
Mm-mm.
love how like Quint pushes past them, and Hooper then he says to him, "You get on the bridge before that," but he pushes past them, and then Hooper's just kind of like keep pulling faces at him, and Brody comes in and says like, "Oh, what's the point? Hooks and lanes." And Quint goes down the cabin. I don't know what that's called, and the lower decks, and comes up with something else. And he's explaining to Brody what he does, how he catches them. He's like, you lose one, you rig one. He says, I like to trick him to the surface, then I jab at him. He says, I don't want to haul him up like a lot of catfish. So he doesn't want to just use a big net. And the next thing he hears the engine going. And I love this acting from by Robert Shaw, the way he looks around and he goes, Hooper, 12 minutes, southeast now, full throttle. And he's hitting the fucking ceiling. And I love how like Hooper does the impression from Treasure Island. doing the parrot.
That is very funny.
And then Quint's kind of battering the roof again. He's like, full throttle. I can take this abuse much longer. But you see, he kind of like hits Brody in the head. He goes, your head's bleeding. First aid there. And like Brody's annoyed that he hit him. He's like, what are you doing? But you see, when Quint walks out onto the back of the Orca, and the Orca's like, sailing off. So they're going to a different direction now. Quint is kind of like, great, we'll go to a different direction. We're not getting anything out here. And you see Brody kind of getting up and looking in the window to try and see where he's cut. And then that, of course, that fades into Quint being up in the mast. And he's looking about and he looks down. And there's Hooper's playing solitaire. And there's Brody. I think he's still trying to tie that knot. And that's when he shouts down, Brody, start that chum line again. And by a stage, that's what I'm saying about the separation. Now they're all starting to be separated because they're just bored. They're just like sitting about waiting. Nothing's happening. And Brody's getting fed up with the chumming. He's like, let Hooper take a turn. And Quint says to him, Hooper drives the boat, chief. So when he climbs down the mast, there's our Hooper playing solitaire. And I love this. Then he says to him, stop playing with yourself, Hooper. Slow ahead, if you please. So Brody's getting irritated.
I don't blame him. He's doing the dirty work.
Yeah, he is doing the dirty work. But listen, he has to. Okay, Quint may be taking advantage here because Quint is the captain.
It's his vessel.
Yeah.
I guess, he's using Hooper for what Hooper knows. He's like, yeah, Hooper knows how to drive a ship. You don't. I'm sorry. Like, this is really what I can do for you. I didn't get throw chum in the water.
Yeah, exactly. He needs somebody to throw the chum over. And Hooper's driving the boat. So, and then he's like, I'm not fucking doing it. Right?
I'm the captain. I've earned this. I'm sitting here. I'm watching.
Yeah.
It's my job.
Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, Brody's getting irritated. So he's like, kind of like, he says something before that to him. I can't remember his jump, but I want to point out about how Quint goes into the cabin and sits down and takes a toothpick out. And even he sighs. Even he's like, even he's starting to go like, fucking hell, So
take a little longer than I thought.
Yeah, exactly. And then that's when Brody vents at Hooper. He's starting to vent at Hooper. He's like, slow ahead. I go slow ahead. Why don't you come down and chump some of this shit? And then we have the second biggest jump scare of the movie.
I can go slow ahead. Come on down and chump some of this shit.
And when that big old head of Bruce the shark comes out of the water. What do you think about that shot? Just Brody's face at the side of the frame and how that shark comes up and turns. I think it's beautiful.
It's one of the best shots in film history. It's incredible. And just a quick shot of the shark. It's not even much of it. He goes back in the water. You only see it this one time, and obviously it scares the shit out of Brody. He can't even believe it. He's like, we're gonna need a bigger boat.
Yeah, and I love that. Like, people probably don't realize the logistics of trying to get that shot, but I think Verna feels, to her credit, it's very good how very quick cut to Brody pulling back and how terrified he is, and then just the tip of the nose just disappearing below the surface, so your mind is playing it in your head, or a wee bit more, maybe more than what you actually see. It's so quick. And,
it's probably not even 24 full frames. It's probably it's really quick when we get the Jones. We see him come out and then we see him go back in. That's it.
Yeah, and I know that when they finished making the movie, that Richard Zanuck says that every single frame of usable footage of shark was used in the movie, but I do know that they did ask, I think it was Ron and Valerie Taylor, who were shark experts from Australia, who done a lot of like live shark footage for the movie. They asked them, and I think Peter Bensley as well, to select the footage that would look more realistic. They did ask them for advice as well about how a shark actually behaves. They actually said the mechanical shark worked too good when it did work. It was too smooth. And they actually advised them to have it a wee bit more jittery, a wee bit more kind of chomp down. You know what I mean? Up, chomp down. You know, but they had it kind of coming out and doing more, which is surprising because the shark rarely worked and it was hard for it to get it to do things. But they advised them on how the shark would move and how and what parts looked realistic and which parts didn't. And again, this goes back to Ben Gardner's head coming out of the boat. This was the biggest scare in the movie until Spielberg reshot the Ben Gardner head scene, and then that became the biggest scare, and this one then was relegated to like second tier scare because he said everybody was looking out for like jump scares and shadows and things like that after that Ben Gardner scene. But yes, I love how Brody then slowly backs up into the cabin, and Quint's just sitting there oblivious. I know, and he doesn't even turn to him. He just says,
"You're gonna need a bigger boat."
Classic lines in all of cinema history.
Oh yeah, that's probably one of the most quoted lines you'll ever hear in your life. I mean, and it's iconic because it's like he saw it and only he's seen it. He's already knows that this shark is way too long for this boat. Like it's not what we thought, and he's just telling him like, "Well, our plans are done. Like I saw that thing. We're not prepared."
What I like about it too is the way that's shot too is that before it comes, like Brody's not even looking at the water, John. He's turned to shout up at Hooper, and like it's always already there by the time he turns. You know, how close was that in his mind to me taking his arm off? Do you know what I mean?
It could have been on so much work. He didn't see it come up at all.
Yeah, exactly. So he is like terrified at this stage, I think. And one thing about the lane as well is that my brother was telling me I was at a Holy Communion, and my nieces go to an Irish language school, and I think it was the priest at the church said he actually quoted Jaws, but he said it in Irish. He said to quote Jaws, and he said we're going to need a bigger boat during the ceremony. And I think my brother said he was referring to, he'll correct me, I'm sure, but to the amount of people in the church. Yeah. But he said the line in Irish. So I said to my brother, it just shows you how much Jaws 50 years later is still in the zeitgeist. It's still being quoted. People are still talking about this movie 50 years later.
There's just certain things that have passed into pop culture, almost like into our minds, that it's like it's stuck there. You don't even realize. Like you're gonna people will say that and never even see Jaws. We're gonna need a bigger boat. Yeah, that's how big that moment is. Just the line in general. It's the same thing like with the Jaws theme. Doesn't matter if you ever saw Jaws. It's one of those things that have just crossed over in the pop culture that everyone knows it. Star Wars, Luke, I am your father. This is right up there with it.
100%. Like make him an offer you can't refuse. Exactly. I think like make him an offer you can't refuse, and you're going to need a bigger boat. For me, I would say are the two most popular. Definitely.
I would say that's definitely up there. And then I would also say Luke, I am your father. It's one I heard a bajillion times. And even though they get it wrong, it was just funny. Because like even this one, it's like, you're going to need a bigger boat. We all say we're going to need a bigger boat.
Yeah, you always get it wrong. And I have to say, so this scene here, John, this first barrel chase or first barrel attached scene or whatever you want to call it, this is my favorite scene in the whole movie.
Really?
100%. From when that shark pops his head up, Brody backing in the cabin, to when they hook this shark up, the acting, the dialogue, the music, it's outstanding. I'd never get tired watching this scene. And I'll go into it a wee bit more here. So we see, I know a lot of people love the Indianapolis speech. That's great too. And everybody loves that cabin scene. I mean, it's my favorite movie. I love every scene. But this scene for me is just, it probably has to be. I was thinking about it earlier when I was watching the movie, just taking a few more notes for the pod. I'm like, why do I have to say Indianapolis scene just to conform? I think like this is my favorite scene in cinema history. It has to be. It's my favorite movie. I never get tired watching this scene, and it's masterfully done. And it's got one of the most, quoted lines of all time in film history too, with three of the most memorable characters and one of the most memorable villains of all time in cinema history. So, but we see Quint, then he slowly emerges from the cabin. And I love this because like we mentioned earlier about like, they don't know what they're going to have to face. Quint thinks this is just another job. Hooper knows that this is something that he may not have countered before, but he not for one moment does he think it's going to be anything that he's about to see, and Brody is just terrified, right? But
Oh,
the look on Quint's face as we haven't seen anything yet. The audience hasn't. All the audience has seen is the shark come out of the water and back in again. We just see their reactions as Quint steps forward and can't believe what he sees. And the next thing is you hear the music, and then the camera turns and there's the fin. And I love that line. Quint says to him, "Shut off that engine." And then Hooper turns and just can't believe what he's seeing. And I just love those three guys standing there watching as this Leviathan comes heading towards them, and the John Williams shark theme's playing.
And that's what makes that theme so perfect. They use it a couple times in this last act of the movie, like when he's going further away, how much quieter it gets, and he's getting closer. It makes us feel like we're stuck on the boat with them, and we can't escape it. It's either to come and go as it pleases, but we're here.
Yeah, and the other thing is that as I get older and as and as movies change, and you have movies like The Shallows, even, and The Meg, and and Sharknado, I look at this movie, and I go to myself like, I think in this day and age, people would expect as soon as the shark to just be shaking the boat in its teeth by now. Do you know what I mean? And maybe expecting this to be the climax of the movie. And as I say, it's only just starting. The hunt is only just starting, and and it's just, and I think that's what makes this movie so great, John, is because scenes like this, the characters, Spielberg made it feel so real, even though this shark is probably doing things that a shark would never do. He made it feel so real, and that's what makes it terrifying. So as that shark then gets closer, and I love how you just see it just glide across the stern of the boat, and Quint follows it, watches it, and then it cuts back to their faces, and Hooper's like, "That's a 20-footer," and Quint's like, 25, and 3 tons of them. So at this stage, then, I love this. This is when the music changes. This is like, for me, it's called the Orca theme, kicks in, and the action has to kick in here. Hooper jumps down from the bridge. Brody's still saying, "You're going to need a bigger boat, right?" And Quint says, "No, we got to get to work." So this is where Quint gets to work, and of course, Hooper's got his wee camera around his neck, and he's like, "Over here, Martin, I need you." And Quint goes into the cabin, and he pulls out his case, which keeps his harpoon gun in, and opens that up. And then in the meantime, you see the shark circling the boat. But I love the dialogue. You can hear the dialogue in the background. You can hear like Hooper saying, like, "It's circling the boat. Look at the size of it." And you see like Brody kind of slipping as he's walking up the side of the Orca to the bow. And you see then Quint assembling the harpoon gun. And I love how he does this. And when he just pulls that harpoon, you just see the point of it into the top of the frame of the camera. And then that's when you hear like the radio going, and it's like, "Amity Point, White Station, the Orca. This is Amity Point, White Station, the Orca. Come in, Orca." And Quint answers it, and it's Mrs. Martin Brody is on the phone, and or on the call, and that's Steven Spielberg doing that voice.
Oh, really? Oh, that's funny.
But in the meantime, we have Dreyfus and we have Shader on the bow, and he's telling Shader to go out onto the pool pit. This guy's afraid of water, terrified of the shark he's just seen. And he's like, "Go to the end of the barrels. Just go to the end of the barrels." And he goes to the end of them, and he's like, "Further out." And he's like, "What?" He's like, "Go further out." And he's like, "What for?" And he goes, "Go to the end of the pool pit." And he's like, "What for?" And he's like, "I just want to get you in the foreground to give it some scale." And he's like, "Foreground my ass." He's trying to coax him to go all the way out. I love that wee bit of comedy through in there.
Yeah, like he's just like, "Yeah, I'm gonna use you for what I need you for." But this is where Roy Scheider really also gets to shine a lot more. It's like he does like start to stand up for himself, and he's gonna call him out for the bullshit.
Yeah, he's like, "Foreground my ass," and then then it cuts to Quint in the cabin, and he's like talking to Alan Brody, and he's like, "Your husband's fishing, Mrs. Brody. We just caught a couple of stripers. We're bringing them in for dinner. I haven't seen anything. Won't be long. Over and out."
Yeah.
And he's like, I could just imagine Alan sitting there thinking, "Martin's fishing?
Mm-hmm. He is."
I think she knows that's bullshit. She's probably going, "What is going on out there?" And like, does Quint even tell him like, "Oh yes, I was speaking to your missus there."
No, he doesn't tell him at all. He doesn't tell him. He doesn't care.
No, I don't think he even mentions it. I don't think he even says a word that your missus was on the. He probably sees that as kind of like, "Look, you're interfering with official business here. We do not want you, messing up your husband's mind when we're out here trying to do a job. Okay."
He's gonna start thinking about you and the family. He's got to do a job right now.
Yeah, exactly. So Quint kind of like, goes to swing round the side of the Orca and he pulls his harpoon gun out. So that forces Brody back and he tells him to get on the bridge and keep it steady. And he says to Hooper to tie the end of this line to the first keg. We got to get a good shot at this porker's head. And I love this thing. Hooper then disappears down into the cabin to adjust the gizmo he was making earlier on. It's like a tracker. It's like a beeper. I love then how I love how this cuts, John, the Quint on the pulpit, and he just sees the fin coming for him, and he's giggling and laughing. He's like, "It's coming, it's coming." But then when he turns, he's got the smile on his face, and he sees Hooper's not there, and he sees the barrel has him tied up, and his face just drops, and he's like, "Hooper, where the hell are you?"
He can't believe it. He's like, "We're ready for this," and he's like, "He's not here."
Yeah, and then he's like, and you hear it cuts to the under the cabin, and he's screaming like, "Hooper, tie it up, will you?" But then Hooper has his dig. Nobody can hear to himself. He's like, "Your turn, Quint." He jumps through the window of the Orca, slides out onto the bow, and Quint's saying, "Hurry up, tie it on, Hooper." He's coming for us. Tie it on. And Brody, in his naivety, I like how this shot, but of the spotlight and how it's kind of like that. And he's using that like as an aim. And as the shark comes in the frame, though there's a boat's bouncing up and down, he's like, "Shoot it now. Kill it, Quint. Kill it." He thinks they're going to kill it with his harpoon.
Yeah, one harpoon. But
I love that actual shot, John, of Robert Shaw on the bow, on the pulpit, and it's kind of like a silhouette, and you've got the sea behind him and the fin, and you see it just bouncing up and down in the waves, and the way the John Williams music's playing.
It is a perfect shot. I mean, there's numerous perfect shots in this movie, but that is a perfect shot.
Yeah, and then, of course, Hooper gets it tied up, shouts to Quint, "Shoot!" He fires the harpoon. The first barrel goes over, and then we have that. I love how he's like a Quint's like, "Hooper, what were you doing? You knew we had to get a good shot right in the head. Now let's see how long it takes that barrel to bring him up." And you see Dreyfuss jump into the bridge, and he's like, he's excited now himself. He's like, "Bring another barrel. I'm coming around again." And I love that like heroic music then kicks in.
This is a great. I just want to. I know, real quick.
No,
just want to say, I love that shot of Dreyfuss. Like when he's like front on him and how he's yelling. This feels like a very adventurous scene. I love this part of it. That's a great shot. And his energy, it's perfect. Like it does kind of feel like a guy's like on a boat, like they're in the middle of an adventure. Like kind of feels like Spielberg was inspired by those serials that we always talk about that would end up in Indiana Jones in this moment.
Well, he always said he's seen this as like a pirate movie. And that's why I've heard, you see a lot of things online, okay? It's probably the minority. But like I've seen people say, what's with this music, and to me it's pirate music, it's swashbuckling music, and this is how the music actually kind of like builds to this, where you think, here's our three heroes as they're going through the water, they've hooked the shark with one barrel, they've started the job to eliminate this beast. And as they're sailing through the water, all their hair is blowing in the wind, and it's going, bah, 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 bah. There are three heroes. That's it, and it's all about, bravado. It's all about courage. It's all about being a hero. And we'll see this later on with Indiana Jones, and that's what we're seeing here. These are the guys. These are going to be the three heroes. But of course, when the barrel actually goes under the water, the music all of a sudden kind of like patters out. You hear the do 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 do. But Hooper's raising. He's like hitting the top of the bridge and going. But Quint is calm. Quint's kind of like, because he's already said it took two barrels to catch a 16-footer. So he's probably thinking, yeah, probably take at least two. We'll get this with two. So he needs to get another one. And then I love this shot again. It goes back to what I was saying earlier about how mundane it is being at sea. The shark's gone. They don't know where it is. The barrel hasn't come up, but they're sailing about. And then, we're going from day to dusk to night.
Before we get there, I just want to point out, I love, it's very similar to a shot in Close Encounters when the door opens, the burnt orange sky when they're shifting. Yeah. I mean, I know that's probably not a shot a lot of people think about it because it's quick. It's just a transition. Like, so we know that it went from day to night, but especially on 4K Blu-ray, I live for shots like that. That is beautiful. That orange sky.
No, you're right, man. It's beautiful. I love that. As a matter of fact, I actually have a painting on my wall here of that shot.
Oh, really?
I actually have two. One is kind of done in a modern type of style. I don't know what you call it. I'll send you pictures of it.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that.
I'll send you the pictures, mate, later on. But one is actually one that I bought on a pre-order, and then what happened was that it was my 40th birthday. It was 3 years, nearly 3.5 years ago, and my brother, belongs to me, I didn't know, bought me the other one.
Oh, that's a nice
Um,
gift.
Yeah, I love it. So then my other one, I said to him, I have ordered something similar to this,
Mm.
and I said, but so I got them. Well, the one my brother got me was framed, and I got the other one framed, and I have both of them hanging in my living room, either side of my sliding doors out of the conservatory. So it's like, the match. They're really nice. So I'll send you a photo of it, mate. But that's a beautiful shot. And
That's funny that you would actually have that, because every time I watch the movie, like the one thing with me in movies, like I always said, I don't necessarily like put this like as a 10, like it's a 10 out of 10 movie, but it's not in my personal top 10. But what
Mhm.
always keeps me coming back is like the filmmaking. It's
Mhm.
shots like that, and then the next shot of the orca floating in the water that I just randomly think, like, I love cinematography, so I just randomly think about things like that.
Yeah, no, but listen, this is probably part of the reason why it's my favorite movie of all time, because it's like when I return to watch Jaws, it's shots like that I absolutely love. And do you know a funny thing, a bit of trivia here? It was me and you were doing a podcast one night. I can't remember which one it was, and I was watching Murder She Wrote was on my TV in the background. And of course, that's set at a fishing village, Murder She Wrote, and Cabot Cove is actually the Jaws Lake at Universal Studios Hollywood. So they redecorate that set to say Cabot Cove. And the orca sat on that lake for years. So when you're watching Murder, She Wrote, every now and again, if they're at Jaws Lake, you'll see the orca in the background.
Huh,
Right?
interesting.
Yeah. So I was watching, so I caught it. We were finishing up a podcast one night, and I caught it out of the corner of my eye. This particular episode I never watched the episode. It was on mute. Something to do with fishing. And they were showing all these boats going out to sea. And all of a sudden, they showed that shot from Jaws that you're talking about with the sun. But it was from a different angle. It was like an outtake. And I'd never seen that shot before. I couldn't believe it. I was like, that's a shot from Jaws.
Isn't that funny how they recontextualize things and use like just a bunch of B-roll footage and other things? It's like a lot of people might not realize the original ending of Blade Runner is just stuff taken from The Shining, B-roll footage from The Shining.
Well, there you go. Exactly. It was, but for something to be so iconic, it was the orca, and it was the silhouette, and it was the red sky, and you could see the silhouette of Quint on the pulpit with his harpoon.
Really?
Yes, it was that exact shot.
They used
But
that?
They used it, yeah, 100%. And you could see Roy Scheider and Richard Dreyfuss on the bridge, but it was just silhouetted. And it's that shot, but it's like an outtake or a different angle. Maybe they used it was a different camera. Maybe they had a couple
Who
of cameras.
produces Murder, She Wrote? Do you know?
Well, it's a Universal
Produced
it's Universal Studios, like you mentioned on your podcast, or your thing, or like Knight Rider, Universal, Columbo, Universal, Murder, She Wrote, Universal. Film.
Gotcha.
Some of it was filmed on the Universal backlot, but this was like you say, B-roll footage or an outtake or something. I couldn't believe it. It was the orca, clear as day. That scene from the movie, going through the waves, bright red sun on the background, and then you see the silhouette of the three actors. And
That's crazy.
I couldn't believe it.
They probably thought nobody would notice something like that. They probably needed to fill up, like when they were editing, they're like, oh, we got this stuff right here. We could just use it, fill it in. No one will notice. Or like, maybe they didn't really care if anyone did.
I think the editor just didn't know what it was. Maybe he wasn't too familiar with Jaws.
So that's the same editors who pick all of Warner Brothers cover art. They don't know what they're doing.
Yeah,
they don't know what they got.
That's the way I look at it. I look at it now and I go, the person that done that probably just didn't know what it was from and just thought, I'll throw this boat in here. It's a nice shot of it. You know what I mean? Maybe not realizing, maybe they hadn't seen Jaws. So I'm just throwing that out there. But I couldn't believe it that it was used. I like watching Murder, She Wrote, hoping to see like the orca, you know what I mean, on the backlot during the 80s. But I couldn't believe that was actually an outtake from the actual movie.
Murder, She Wrote's getting a Blu-ray release of the entire series. Not 4K, but in Blu-ray. So, you can buy it now and pause it.
Yeah, well, I don't know. It might be expensive. I spent enough in the Columbo collection.
Columbo's a better show than Murder, She Wrote. But I know that when I was growing up, my grandmother was a big fan, and I'd watch that with her.
Yeah, I love Murder, She Wrote, but I don't know if I want to spend a lot of money on it. If I get it for cheap, maybe.
Well, Knight Rider coming to 4K has me intrigued, but I'm like, I can't justify that. If Miami Vice comes to 4K, I'll get that.
Yeah. Here, how much is Knight Rider?
It hasn't been priced yet, but that'll probably be over $100.
Yeah, because I seen the DVD set years ago for like £26, and I didn't buy it. And then the next thing was you couldn't get it for less than like I don't know what it was. It was really expensive, like £80 or something.
When I see a TV show for Blu-rays, like when it gets to really low, I usually will grab it. Like that just in case something happens where it goes out of print. Like that 70s show was like $15 US a couple years ago in Best Buy, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna grab that just because I cannot imagine it ever being that low again. And whatever the reason is, I'll grab it.
Well, that's why I grabbed my Columbo DVD box set. It was a Black Friday, and I got it for like £30. But this was like the following Friday, and they forgot to take a label off it. And I brought it to the counter, and he looked at it. And he went, "That's Black Friday's prices." And I went, "Is it? Oh, I thought that." And he went, "I'll sell you it for that anyway." They have to. The price was on it.
Gotta honor it. Gotta honor
So I
it.
got it. I got it for like £30, which was like half price. So, but I didn't mind actually buying the Blu-rays because I was able to pay them off, and I do love Columbo. I love the show, so I had
That's
to.
worth it.
Yeah,
Well, like last week, Amazon had a couple days ago. I think it still might be up. They have a price price error for it to Catch a Thief on 4K Steelbook. I got it for $13 pre-ordered.
Oh, brilliant! Hopefully they don't.
They won't.
that.
No, they won't correct it because they have
No.
to. The way Amazon has their rules is if you pre-order something, whatever the lowest price that happens during that pre-order period, you get it for that.
Happy days.
So I've gotten some. Amazon won't deliver anything ever on time, but they do honor that.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's true. Because I
And the
did
guy will
order.
throw it from the street to my front porch, but it's fine.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know, as they do.
Yeah.
But here's this shot at the end here before we fade in the night. I just want to point out, I love how Brody's still going on about, what do we do now? We quit, right? And Quint's like, we got one barrel on him, so we stay out here till we find him again. And you see Brody's like, if we really want to get a bigger boat out here. But just before that, do you not notice as they're sailing along, Dreyfus then starts staring at Quint? Do you ever notice that? And then Robert Shaw's on the pulpit, and he kind of like stares back at him and like gives him the eyes. Did you notice that?
I did, but I don't know what the reasoning is. I just assumed they were just staring at each other just because, because of their rivalry.
Yeah, they are. They're just staring at each other. I just think that's so funny, the way they're just like staring at each other in the night. And yeah, then of course, I love that shot then of Shaw on the pulpit with he's whistling, and then it transitions into that, as you say, that shot at night on the ocean and inside the cabin. And they're all, I've got it right here. They're all Quint and Hooper are very tipsy. They're very merry. Brody doesn't seem to be drinking too much. So he was drunk early in the movie, and he's worrying. He's fretting about the wee cut in his head, and Quint says to him, "Don't you worry about it, Chief. It won't be permanent. You want to see something permanent?" He takes the wee tooth out and all. And he says to Hooper, "You want to feel something permanent?" He says, "Put your hand underneath my cap. Feel that little lump." So this then goes into the Scar comparing scene, which is legendary.
Legendary because that's just them trying to one up each other, like classic men stuff. I always felt like this when I watched this scene. Like always, like you're sitting around, you're drinking, trying to prove that you're tougher than the other guy. Every time I watch this, though, I always think of like Hooper still is like that like guy who's like comparing himself to like a real badass, and he's like, "I got this from doing this." I'm just like, everything you've done, Quint's gonna have one better on you. And and of course, he has the ultimate trump card at the very end. But I just always love it. But I always notice Roy Scheider when he looks at his stomach and like that the scar. What is that?
An appendix scar?
Is that what that is? I was always wondering if it was something from like when he was on the job in the city.
Yeah. See, people have always speculated it's a gunshot wound, and that's why he left New York.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
But as far as I'm aware, it's an appendix wound. And that's the thing. So here's these two guys, right? And they're comparing scars. And I have to say, like, this has been parodied. It was parodied in Lethal Weapon.
It's parodied everywhere. It's very famous. Mm-hmm.
And as you say, they're trying to one up each other, but it's also a bonding scene as well, John. This is where they're kind of getting a wee bit merry, getting a wee bit drunk. They hook the shark with one barrel. Quint, of course, he's thinking of the next day because he's kind of like $200 a day, And so they've had something to eat. They're having a drink. They're bonding. They're telling stories. They're telling jokes. And then it turns into this scar scene. As you say, they're trying to one up each other. In the end, Hooper has to say, like, "I've got the creme de la creme." And he's like, "What's that?" He's like, "Right here." He's undoing his top. And Roy Scheider's like, "You're wearing a sweater." And he's like, "No. Mary Ellen Moffat. She broke my heart." So he has no war after that. He has to make a joke out of it. And even Quint is laughing.
Yeah, because that is a funny joke. Well, he's also had a few drinks. I think that, like, alcohol is the perfect bonding method. Now you're a little bit, you can let your guard down a little bit as long as you're not an angry person, but you're bonding. You can joke around. Like, you feel like a little bit more comfortable with these guys. You just spent the whole day with them. It was a rough day. You can just chat a little bit.
Yeah. And also, I also feel as well, John, it even happens before that. Of course, I think Quint at this stage isn't being nasty. He's bantering him. You know what I mean? He's like, look at that. I can't extend that. Do you know why? And he's kind of like, oh, I've got something for you. But it's even when they put the legs over each other.
Yeah, that's
And,
usually showing like that you're a little bit more lighthearted and trusting. Like if you're gonna put your leg over the other guy's leg, you trust them a little bit more.
yeah, because even Hooper's like bull shark scraped me while I was taking samples. And then when Quint puts his leg over and says, I've got something for you, that's the Thresher. And he says, see that, Chief? Thresher's tail. And Brody's like, Thresher? And right away, Hooper's like, it's a shark. But you see Quint kind of looking at him as if, you're actually all right.
Yeah, like you trust him a little bit, but now he's just like, you gotta understand the guy's like, he's the older one on him, and he's been through probably, and we'll find out a little bit more why. But like, he's like, okay, like he has a fence that you gotta like kind of break through, a hard shell, but he's all right.
Yeah, he looks at him and he's like, you're all right, and then that's when he says, drink to your leg. And he says, let's drink their legs. Okay, so we drink their legs, and of course, yeah, Brody then pulls his up and looks at the scar, and that's him kind of thinking, puts it back down again, as if these guys have been, bitten by sharks, and I'm not going to show them a bloody appendix scar. That's why I don't think it's a bullet wound, because I think if it was a bullet wound, he would tell them.
See, I thought of it more as like,
shot.
I think that it would take it to a too serious of a level. That's why I always thought he never told him it was a bullet wound. That's why I always looked at it like that. Like he would think like, all right, I don't need to show them. This is kind of something personal to me, and I don't need to like bring it down. The mood's kind of light right now. That's how I looked at it.
I'm trying to remember where I seen it was an appendix scar. I must look into that, John. Confirm that. I've definitely read it somewhere, seen it somewhere. Don't know if it's in the screenplay or it's in one of the making of books or something like that. But yeah, and then of course Brody's intrigued, and he's still trying to tie those knots. Do you see? And he's like, "What's that one?" And Quint's like, "What one?" And he's like, "That one there on your arm." And of course Dreyfus makes another joke about it being his mother, and I love this how he turns around and he stops him. He goes, "Mr. Hooper, that's the USS Indianapolis," and Hooper just stops laughing. Because he knows, Brody obviously doesn't know anything about this disaster or this tragedy, and I love how he's kind of like he stops laughing, and then he says, "You were on the Indianapolis," and Brody's still kind of jovial. He's like, "What happened?" And that's where we enter into the speech.
One of the greatest monologues in film history.
Japanese submarine slammed 2 torpedoes into our side, Chief.
So yeah, Robert Shaw gives one of the greatest performances, or one of the greatest monologues that I've ever seen in a movie. And for this alone, he should have won Best Supporting Actor at the Oscars in 1976.
Yeah, I mean, this going through the range of emotions, telling the whole story about everything that happened, and then just to circle back to how he's been through hell, and it's like, yeah, we delivered the bomb, like we still did our job, but look at what it did to me for the rest of my life and the amount of people that died to do that job.
Well, the thing is that, John, is that this isn't in the book. So this kind of gives motive for Quint's character to give an idea of why he done what he done, or what he does, why he's obsessed with sharks, why he kills so many sharks, rather than just, I'm a shark fisherman and I just hate sharks. This gives a motivation of why he hates sharks and why he wants to eradicate them from the ocean. And it's almost like a revenge mission for him. Some people have described it as kind of like PTSD, is dealing with his PTSD.
Well, I think like in a future scene, I think that does kind of confirm that, like the way he wants like almost like revenge on this shark. I do think that everything he does with sharks does come from a point of revenge of like what it did to him. Like when he's talking about his friend bobbing in the water, that's gonna fucking like ruin your mind for the rest of your life to see something horrific. And he spends 5 days in the water, shark infested water, watching people die.
Herbie Robinson from Cleveland, baseball player, bosoms mate. Yeah, exactly. And other people have said that maybe it's survivor's guilt, which is why he's on this vendetta. Maybe he feels like this is his destiny. But I also like how he describes his own death during this monologue, which is quite haunting as well.
Oh yeah, he describes exactly what it's like to be eaten by a shark, the water turning red, everything, the crunch of it all. Yeah. He basically does describe his whole death. His death is foreshadowed throughout this thing, and the death of the shark.
Yeah, and he says you hear that howling and screaming, the ocean turns red, and they all come in and rip you to pieces.
Doesn't matter how much you scream.
Yeah, and I like, as you say, the emotions are the way he's like, by the end of that first dawn, lost 100 men. Don't know how many sharks, maybe 1,000. Don't know how many men. The average 6 an hour. But I love Richard Dreyfuss beside him here. He is in awe. Dreyfuss says that he didn't have to act this scene. he says that he was in awe of this actual speech that Robert Shaw was given, this acting class lesson that he was giving them. And but as the character of Hooper, he is totally and utterly captivated that this man survived this. And this kind of gives his character breaking down barriers to accept this old crusty fisherman who's killing all these sharks, which, Dreyfus may have had a wee bit of, or Hooper may have had a wee bit of, what's the word I'm looking for? He may have had negativity towards Quint because of what he was doing and how rough he is and all those type of things. But now this learning about where Quint came from is breaking down those barriers with him.
Yep. I think this gave him a new sense of respect for him and respects the job he's doing, because it's like this guy was on something, because he knows what the U.S. Indianapolis is and knows exactly what happened. So he's like, for this guy to be one of those survivors, yeah, he's been through hell and back, and he deserves some sort of respect for that.
Respect is 100% is the word, John. Mm-hmm. And I love how when he talks about Herbie Robertson, he says, reached over to wake him up, bobbed up and down in the water like he's like a can of tap, upended. Well, he'd been bitten in half below the waist. And I love that cutaway shot of like Hooper like looking at Brody and then Brody looking at Hooper. They don't have to say anything. They just have to look at each other. How horrified they are. And and then when the speech ends, as you say, he says,
anyway, we delivered the bomb.
He tries to lift the mood a wee bit.
Mm-hmm.
Takes a drink, but there's just silence, and then he starts singing that's the song Farewell and Adieu. Like he sings Farewell and Adieu 3 times, I think, in this movie, and they're all done in different ways. This one's very sad. Later on, it's angry, but earlier it's jovial. Because of having a job at Hooper, but getting in his cage. But then, of course, the break, they hear the wheel, and then just to break the silence, Hooper starts singing "Show Me the Way to Go Home."
Yeah, I love that, the singing together. It's great.
It's brilliant. They all sit down and they're singing, and of course, because they've had a few drinks and they're singing, it attracts the shark, but they don't hear it coming. The shark starts attacking the boat. I love how Quint is the first one because he's the hunter. He's the first one to notice something's wrong. You see him stopping singing first and looking around, and then Hooper stops, doesn't know what's going on, and then Brody's continuing. He's like,
yeah,
nobody waited. And
because he's the one who just doesn't know the most about this. He's the most naive.
Yeah, exactly. And that's when the Quint's like, start the engines. So the sharks are starting to attack the boat. It's the first time we really see the sharks start to attack the boat. It's at nighttime. It's don't know, incensed by the noise and maybe having this barrel attached to it, and it starts to leak water through the planks. Brody thinks he's drowning because he falls into like 2 centimeters of water, and
can't handle the water.
He can't handle it, and Quint is loading the M1 Garand, and I love how the Brody goes straight for the radio, and it knocks it's like the wee lantern falls, and it lights the deck on fire, and I love how Quint is just kind of like, Chief, put out the fire.
I know what you have to do here, right?
Yeah, but notice Brody lifts Quint's jacket and uses his jacket to put the fire out.
He's not going to use his own.
No.
Gotta put it out, right?
You're going to put it out. And then, of course, the lights go out. And I love this part of the movie when the lights go out. And Dreyfus is like, great, he ate the light. And then the John Williams music starts. And Quint's like, everybody out the back. And he starts firing the M1 Garand at it. And Hooper's like, what are you doing? Don't waste your time, Quint. Come on. So I don't know whether or not Hooper was expecting to maybe hook another barrel up.
I think that was what it was. Is like he was trying to hook another barrel to him.
What, with the Garand?
Yeah, I thought that was the plan, at least. I mean, I guess you're right. And Hooper's right. Don't waste your, if you don't know for sure if you're going to get him. No,
well, he's shooting him with a rifle.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So with the rifle. Yeah, I don't know what the point is then of the rifle.
Yeah, the rifle's an M1 Garand.
Is that what they call it?
Yeah, it's a World War II rifle.
Yeah, I don't know how much damage. Not to that shark.
Yeah. Well, look, he's shooting exactly. He's shooting into the water. The bullets mightn't even hit the shark, right? So it's not the harpoon gun he's using. But Hooper's saying to him, "Don't waste your time, Quint. Come on," as if to say, "Let's get it with a harpoon." But it's nighttime, so it's going to be very hard to see it. Although he's got that tracker on it, which is illuminating it. But I think at this stage, Quint's just, after telling the story, the shark attacking the boat, he's just taking a bit of anger out on it. He's just like, bastard, he's just going to fucking shoot this M1 Garand into it. Quint knows finally it's not going to kill it. He knows finally we're going to need more than one barrel. I think he's just angry at this stage. And of course, he asks Brody to follow it, watch for it, and Brody shovels to the bow this time and he's terrified again, and he pulls out his revolver. But I love when the shark he near slips off the side again. Every time he watches, he thinks he's going to slip off the side and fall in the water. But the thing is that eventually when the shark disappears, I love how the music kind of quietens down and how Hooper's like, "Hey Martin, you okay?" I love how he calls him Martin. It's very personable.
Yeah, because now they have a friendship, they have a kinship together.
Yeah, and he's like, "Hey Martin, you okay?" And you hear Quint singing, but that's the first time you see the first of two shooting stars.
Oh, okay. Hey, interesting. Good luck for shooting stars, right?
Yeah, now there's a debate over the years whether or not these are real. I think Spielberg put them in afterwards, but the first one is when the camera pans up after the shark has disappeared, and you hear Hooper saying that, "Hey Martin, you okay?" You see one behind the bridge, and then when you have that launch shot and you hear Quint singing, you see one up in the sky, another one firing across. And I believe this is something that Spielberg done in his movies for a while. There's one in Close Encounters, there's one in Raiders, bound to be one in 1941. I don't know, I can't remember. There's one in E.T., isn't there?
Yeah, there's one in E.T. E.T. is like one of the more famous ones, I think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it makes a lot of sense in movies about like the sky and aliens and stars.
1941, he does have a lot of night shots, so I'm sure there's one in there.
Yeah, well, he parties Jaws at the start of 1941 with the same actress.
That is true. I mean, do we do 1941 on this show one day just to see if it's that bad?
Well, I'd be up for it. I'd have to buy it because I had it in DVD and I give it to a charity shop.
And that's probably where it belongs.
Yeah, when I was moving house, I was like, I need to get rid of that one. Although I wish I had kept it because I do need to watch it because I feel as if it's built up like a cult following over the years.
I think people go back to it now and they're probably like, "Oh, it's not as bad as people made it out to be. It's just not Jaws."
Yeah, and Murray Hamilton and Lorraine Gary are in it.
Yeah, I mean, he brings back a lot of people.
Yeah, I do need to check it out again. So I do, and try and see if it's as bad as I remember. Because it's written by Bob Gale, isn't it? Robert Zemeckis, and who else has something to do with it too? Somebody else has something to do with it.
I think Robert Zemeckis said he didn't think he'd get a job with Steven Spielberg again after that.
After that, and Used Cars.
Yeah, which is a shame because Used Cars I like.
Yeah, that's right. They weren't doing too well until Back to the Future. But Spielberg. Okay, so we fade again in the next day. Do you like that transition of the Orca into like night and day?
There's a lot of nice transitions. I like the one though in the beginning of the film more than this one, where it's night to day. The first night into the first day shot. I just think I like that one just on the water.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I like this one too. And you see the bird flying past, and here they are fixing the engine from the attack from the night before from the water getting in, and then the next thing is the barrel surfaces at the stern of the boat. Brody sees it and calls to Quint, "The barrel's up, it's went in the stern." And "What do you say, Chief?" And he pulls himself out. And you know what, Nate, as I've said before, this is the movie that got me to love movie soundtracks. The music that is played in this scene always gives me goosebumps. It's very low, slow, understated, underplayed. And it's just, Quint and Hooper with, I think it's a boat hook, he calls it, trying to get the rope of the barrel and bring the shark to the surface, and it's absolutely beautiful. I just love it. You should try check it out and listen to it. It's called Barrel Off Starboard.
I will actually. I listened to the score last week, so I don't remember exactly. I listened to the whole score. I appreciate the score. It's a great, phenomenal. That's what I was saying last week. The John Williams score, besides obviously the theme, it's a great score overall. Yeah.
Well, on the original soundtrack, which came out in '75, this plays at the end of it's called the Cage Futilage or something, or Futilage or something like that on the soundtrack. But obviously in the expanded score, this is its own piece of music, and it's more akin to what you hear in the movie, whereas the one in the original soundtrack is like a re-recording, but they're both still brilliant. Just the one in the original recording ends differently. This one here obviously just ends with the shark attack, and it's called Barrel Off Starboard, I think it's called. But of course, Quint tells Hooper, "You drop that rope when he runs, you lose your hands." But Quint then takes the rope off him, and the shark does leap out at them. And I don't know whether or not why Quint doesn't let go of the rope. Maybe it's because he's so startled at the size of the shark. Of course, it pulls the rope and it cuts his hand.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's because he was so startled by the shark. That was my interpretation of that.
And do you notice how, like, there's no shark theme when that shark comes out of the water? So Williams has fooled people there. He's conditioned you to kind of associate the theme before the shark, but what he's done here, he's put the shark before the theme.
Yeah, because the shark surprises you.
It surprises you like it does when Brody's chumming again. So that's another wonderful shot, just how you see their arms and then the shark just comes out. Hooper has told him he's got stuff on board that'll kill it, and but Brody's starting to panic a wee bit here. He tells Quint, "I'm going to make a phone call." It's not exactly a phone though, is it?
No,
No.
it's a radio.
It's a radio, and in the meantime, Quint is telling Hooper, pull that barrel in, it'll foul us. And so, without warning, Quint just lifts a baseball bat and smashes the radio to pieces.
This is one of my favorite lines in the movie from Roy Scheider. You're certifiable, Quint. You know that? You're certifiable.
But I love how Quint comes in with a baseball bat and just smashes it up and then hands him it and goes, "Excuse me, Chief." And hands him the baseball bat.
That's why he thinks he's nuts. He's like, "Are you fucking kidding me?"
Yeah, that's where he's made his mind up. I think Brody's been thinking this anyway, but this is like the straw. It's a final straw to say, like, you're certified, Quint. You know that, and Quint's probably heard it before. He's like, yeah. But then I love how Dreyfus breaks the tangent. It's kind of strange because whereas Dreyfus and Quint were kind of like at each other's heads the day before, it looks like now it's going to be Brody and Quint, right? But I love how Dreyfus then comes up and says, "Hey, boys, I think he's back from his noon feeding."
I think he's back for his noon feeding. Yeah, I love this. Because,
Yeah.
it breaks this whole tension up because that's a big deal that he did that because now it's like we're stuck out here until we beat this, which is what Quint wants because Quint doesn't want to, he wants to beat it on his own. He doesn't want any help.
Yeah. Now, the thing is that people have asked the question, why did Quint do that? When I was a kid, I used to go, why did he do that for? He's an idiot, you know what I mean? But he's not. But like you say, Quint doesn't want any outside interference. Quint at this stage, I've heard people describe it as like, Moby Dick. This is his white whale. He's the one that wants to catch this shark, and he doesn't want anybody interfering. Now, whether or not it's to do with just his ego, personal glory, or the reward money, who knows?
I think it's a combination of a bunch of things. So we just heard the USS Indianapolis story the night before.
Mm-hmm.
He has a hatred for sharks. This is the biggest shark I'm sure he's ever seen, and he wants to be the one to take it down on his own. Doesn't want to call the Coast Guard. And first of all, A, that'd ruin the movie. B, this is this guy. It's like this is what he does, and that's why he's like he did it calmly. Like he's just like he makes us think the way that with the camera that he's gonna actually hit Martin, but he just hits the radio. But and then he's like he did it that calmly. He's just like he would never really was angry about him calling. He's just like I'm gonna stop you from doing it. This is how. Here's the bat. See you later. Let's figure this out.
and he done it the night before as well with a fire.
Yeah, that's true.
Brody went for the radio when he went, "Chief, put out the fire, will you?"
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So he stopped him again from going to the radio. And like we said, Alan Brody radioed and he probably didn't tell him,
No, he's going to take it. We're out here now. We're finishing this now, no matter what.
Yeah. And of course, then we get to this next set piece here, John, which, again, goosebumps. I absolutely love this. How when Hooper says that, he's come back from his noon and feeding, Quint turns out and says, "Hook me up another barrel." And then that John Williams score starts. And you see the shark just gliding in off the stern while Hooper is actually tying the rope this time. Now, Hooper is fully in cooperation with Quint at this stage. He's in tune. He's not holding him up. He knows what to do. Quint is just relaxed. He's watching that shark come in. And like the hunter he is, I love how he's just watching. You can see the snout. You can see the size of it, and the dorsal fin up, and he's just watching it glide past. And the shark, by the way, as well, is watching them. Great whites do that. They do a thing called, what's it called? Something happened. Can't remember the name of it now, but they're the only shark that takes a look at what's above them on the surface. They'll pop their head out and take a look and go back under again. So I love how the sharks kind of come along watching them. And as it's gliding across and that John Williams music kicks in, Robert Shaw climbs on the side of the orca and he follows the shark all the way along the side of the orca. And I love how Spielberg actually shoots this with a camera gliding past. And you see Dreyfus hand Quint the harpoon gun. Quint spins around and climbs his way out onto the pulpit with Dreyfus feeding him the line, and he fires that gun or that harpoon into the shark. And yeah, I love this to say. I've got this here, like Spielberg's direction, Williams' music, Shaw's aggression, Hooper's cooperation, and Brody's wonder. I love how, like, when he fires out a harpoon in and you see the shark take the barrel, see how fast the rope's coming off and the barrel just flips over into the water, and Quint turns and shouts, "Bring her on after him." And then, of course, we have that wondrous music as well, a play from Williams, which, as you said earlier, it's that adventure music.
Adventurous.
Adventurous, as I said, the pirate swashbuckling music. And I love how you see the orca in the background slowly start to take off, and the barrel's just speeding towards the camera and passes the camera.
The barrels are a great visual tool in these scenes.
Yeah, but that as well, and that all comes from the book as well, by the way. I think there's been an awful lot of confusion over the years that, Spielberg used the barrels because the shark wasn't working. There's a half truth in that, but the barrels is basically in the movie as well, so it wasn't all just about the movie and the barrels. That's what used in the book as well. But yeah, they speed off after that shark, and it feels like they're winning. At this stage, they're winning. As I said, Hooper's cooperating with Quint. Quint's saying, "Get me right up alongside it." He says, and Hooper's like, "I don't know if it's gonna run out that high." And Brody is just in awe of this adventure now. It's almost like Brody's enjoying it now.
Yeah, he's starting to get on board. He's starting to stop being so afraid, and he's just on board for what's going on now.
Yeah, and of course, the guys, they think they're winning. I love how they get closer to the barrel, and Quint's like, "Run him down, Hooper. Run him down." And he crashes into the barrel, and of course, Quint shoots the second barrel into the shark. And as the shark spins and goes past the orca, Brody starts shooting at it with his wee revolver, as if it's some kind of criminal he's encountered in New York, in the streets of New York, which has absolutely no effect on the shark whatsoever.
Not that thick skin. No, it's useless.
Yeah. Great effects though, how you can see like the bullets kind of hit it and the blood coming out actually of the mechanical shark. I think that was done well.
Interesting. Yeah. I wonder if they used actual squibs on that, what they actually did.
Yeah, maybe blood packs under the latex skin, maybe, and a couple of squibs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it works. It does look cool. They got a nice. They were able to actually keep it close, so it actually worked well.
Yeah, it looks great. And of course, then the second barrel pops off, lands in the water, slides past the orca, and it goes under. And I love how the music just kind of like subdues.
Yeah, it goes under like the music goes under. It took it with them.
Yeah, but then it kind of just shows the ocean. And you hear Brody shouting, "I can't believe it, 2 barrels," and he's gone down again. And I love how Quint then runs from the bow up onto the side of the bridge, and he's just watching, and he's just looking for it, and it's not there, and he's like, "It's incredible."
Ian Myers it in the way.
Yeah, exactly. And Dreyfus is just like standing behind him. And of course, the 2 barrels pop up. Quint takes the helm at the bridge. He thinks that should be enough. Right, we're going to get this now. And he tells him, "Grab a couple of poles." And he asks him to tie the rope onto the stern cleats. He's going to drag this thing into shore. He's going to kill it. He's going to drown it. He's going to drag it. He's going to pull it into shore. And I love how Quint is giving Brody directions. Tie your rope around the cleat. That's it. That's right. It'll lock itself off. "Give him room, Brody. Give him." And then Dreyfus or Hooper gets his ass squashed by the ropes. I love that squeal and that like close up of Dreyfus's face as he's squealing.
Yep, that is a great moment.
And Brody has to help him out, and of course,
it looks like it hurts.
Oh, damn right, it would hurt a 3-ton shark pulling on your. You know what I mean? Jesus.
Yeah, he's lucky he didn't get worse than what happened.
Yeah, so imagine like when they got home. You know what I mean? The injuries they had. He would have a big rope burn around his backside.
Well, good thing he doesn't have a wife to explain that to.
Yeah, well, he wouldn't be able to sit down.
No, he'd be leaning for a couple days.
In the book, Hooper gets with Brody's wife.
Yeah, I remember us talking about that, I think, on our Jaws 1 and 2 podcast from years ago.
And of course, he tries to set, he let me try and remember. He tries to tell Brody, quizzes him where he was one particular night, and Hooper tells him he was with Daisy Wicker. But what Hooper doesn't know is that Daisy Wicker is a lesbian, and Brody knows this. So after Brody catches him out on that. Yeah. So I love this. So Quint thinks he's a shoe in here. He thinks this is it. So he turns to Hooper and Brody, and he shouts, I love this line. He turns and he says to him, At home, we got a taxidermy man. He's gonna have a heart attack where he sees where I brought him. And he puts the throttle down, and he thinks he's gonna drag this thing back. And the boat isn't moving. It's just going up and down in the waves. And that's when Hooper says to him, "You're losing your cleat." And he's like, both cleats are coming off. And the shark then raises its head and starts chewing through the rope. And Brody is like, is totally in awe of this. He's like, he's working his way right through that line. And Hooper's like, yeah, he's working his way right across. But in the meantime, they're calling for Quint. Quint comes with a harpoon. And as the shark breaches the water, he fires a third barrel right into its jaw. But he also tells him, look, untie us. He'll pull out the transom. So then the orca goes for a little ride here. The shark starts pulling the orca through the water. And obviously, his tail thrashing back and forward. He's splashing the boat. So the shark's basically slowly beating this boat up. He's slowly breaking it up, slowly killing it.
Yeah, eventually he'll get the knockout blow on her.
Yeah, and of course, Quint realizes that he's going to have to act quick here. It's going to pull the back of the boat off. They're going to sink. So they're asking, somebody suggests, I think it's Hooper, suggests, get something to cut it. Get something to cut. So he runs in with the machete. And again, this is great because it's not just a case of grabbing the machete just to cut the ropes. This then plays a part later on in the movie. And just as Quint comes out to cut the ropes, the cleats come off and the barrels go under the water. And I love how they're just, totally exhausted, and there's water on the deck. Quint says them through 3 barrels. There's no way he can get down with 3 barrels on him. And Brody says, what about us? And he says, get the pump out of the locker in front of you. And Brody's like, we're going to sink, aren't we? And he says to Hooper, keep an eye on the barrels, pump it out, chief. And there we go. John Williams music starts again. So many different variations of the theme in this with other music, right? It's still the bum, 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 but it's how he incorporates the horns into it. And I love this, but Hooper claims the bridge and starts the engine and says, he's going to go under. And Quint's like, damn it, he can't put 3 barrels on him. Not with 3, he can't. But he slams that machete into the side of the boat and claims the ladder. And just as he claims the ladder, I love the music, the way the music plays, and the barrels just all go under the boat. And there's just silence.
And they can't believe what just happened because it's like that should be the thing that brings them up.
Yeah, it's like first of all, it's like, can't go down with 2. Goes down with 2. It's like, fair enough. He definitely can't do 3. And I love how Quint's he's just standing there looking around. They're all just standing baffled, looking around. Where's it went? And I love how Dreyfus says to Quint, you ever have one do this before? Now, I'm convinced that Quint says here, it's hard to tell sometimes with Robert Shaw, but partly because of the characters playing, but I'm near certain he says, I don't know. What do you think he says?
I thought that's what he said. Again, it's kind of mumbled. That I should have put like closed caption on to see if we can get exactly what it said, but it might not even been right. But I think he does say, I don't know. Like, I think because, again, he's in bewilderment. Like, he can't believe that it's actually doing that. Because, again, they have never encountered something like this. He's just used, both of them, him and Hooper, are using the tools that they know to try and help him with something that they've never seen before.
Well, the reason I think he says I don't know is because he's a drinker. And he's killed so many sharks. It's like, has it? We can't remember. But surely you'd remember. But I think he just went like, I don't know. And I love that how Brody is down with the pump. And it's that high shot looking down on the deck. And you see the water flicking back and forward. And he realizes the 2 experts are up there. And I'm down here. He's like, get me the fuck up there. So he goes to climb the ladder. And that's when the shark crashes into the underside of the boat. And the boat sways on its side. And you hear Quint shouting, hold fast, damn it. And when he stands up, I love this shot. This is such an amazing shot, John, for the time of the full mechanical shark swimming from underneath the orca. You see Brody looking over the side. You see Quint running and looking over the side. And the shark just swims off and slowly kind of turns to the side. I think it looks great.
I think it looks great too. I mean, the whole again, from this point on, everything looks great, and you're on the edge of your seat this entire time.
Well, the thing is, we then cut to that John Williams music as well. When that new cue comes in of the shark swimming, just the wonder of the shark swimming off, and then you see that shot of the orca starting to sail away. You see the name or the orca, but the first time you could see land as well.
That is true. That is the first time you can see land since the beginning, because like the whole thing was like they're stuck out here with the shark.
Yeah, the whole premise is that they're in the middle of the ocean. There's no one that can come and save them. They're stuck fighting this unstoppable force. But this is the first time you can see land. You can see Martha's Vineyard in the background there, Amity Island, as the Orca slowly sails off away, and it's almost like the Orca is retreating. You know, it's the first time the Orca is retreating. So it's the first time it's showing any signs. Hello, right? Okay.
Oh, that's cute.
All right, bud. Yeah, so this is the first time that the Orca is retreating. This is, and this is people talk about favorite lines in movies, and everybody always picks out like their favorites is gonna need a bigger boat, and I love "Smile, you son of a bitch." That's one of my favorites.
That's my favorite line in the movie because I love
Is
that.
it?
That's him. Yeah, because that's him standing up to him at the very end and with the confidence. Like, I mean, it does feel like something you would see in any horror movie. Like, I mean, how many horror movies end with like a one-liner before you kill the big bad villain? But still,
Yeah.
With Brody's character from the beginning to the end, that big moment, like, I'm not scared of you anymore, you fucker. Like, that's it.
Yeah, if I'm dying, this is my last name. And even the fact that he says smile, smile, because some sharks look like they're smiling,
Well, this shark at the end when he gets the thing in his mouth looks like he's chewing a cigar to me.
Yeah, 100%, yeah. But this is probably one of my, there's a lot of great names in Jaws, but this has to be one of my favorites, and it's just because of, I think, John, the situation they're in and how Robert Shaw delivers it, and it's his last ditch effort to kill this animal after priding himself on doing this job. It's that camera just on his face. You've got Brody behind him. You've got Dreyfus, and you can see the barrels in the background, and he just says, we're going to draw him in the shallows, going to draw him in the shallow water, going to draw him in and drown him. And he turns and he says, we're heading in, Brody. And Brody's like, thank Christ. That's one of my favorite, if not my favorite line of the whole movie. And just the Williams music playing, and, and of course, then it cuts to the barrels chasing behind them. And then it cuts to Dreyfus saying to Quint, don't put too much pressure on it. But Quint isn't listening anymore. Quint is starting to lose it here. And full throttle. And then they start fighting. And Quint again. And then Quint tells him to get back there. He says, I'll break the engine. And he's like, he says to Brody, hold on. And Brody's just stopping watching. And then he starts singing the angry kind of like, farewell and adieu to your past many days. So he starts singing the angry version. Of course, he's running the boat into the ground. It's like kind of like, this is the first time as well, John, I feel that Quint is scared.
I don't know if he's scared or if he's mad. It's probably a mixture of both. But like, yeah, he literally is running the boat into the ground. And is he doing it to get away, or is he doing it because he hasn't killed it yet?
Well, I think you're right about the anger. I think the anger is changing the fear because he just, I don't know, I feel as if he's scared at this part and he just wants to get as far away from the shark as possible. And it's kind of this idea of this smoke screen of I'm going to drag it in the shallows and drown it. Maybe, as I say, maybe he does kind of hope that's going to happen. But the fact that he's running this boat into the ground and surely he knows he's going to run this boat into the ground here. It's almost like a kamikaze suicide mission now. If I can't kill it, then, I'm just going to, I don't know, I'm just going to flush it all down the toilet. And, of course, smoke starts coming out of the engine. And I love this, how this is the first time we really see Brody assert himself, apart from when he was shouting about the radio, which was kind of like a half effort. It was like he was angry, but he was holding himself back, But this is where first time you really see Brody assert himself, because Hooper goes down there. He says, I'm going to retrieve my stuff. And Brody says to him, stop the boat, stop it now. And of course, Quint has to stop it. But of course, then the engine explodes.
Yep.
And Hooper retrieves his stuff. And Quint then takes the fire extinguisher, puts the fire out. He's regathered his composure again. So he puts the fire out, and you see just like Brody and Hooper watching as the shark retreats, the barrels go under, and then Quint is in the cabin and he's just looking around at the battle damaged Orca, how much damage this shark has done to his boat, and just looking at the damage. And that's when he climbs down into the other cabin and he looks at the life jackets, and in other words, we're going to have to use these now. But Quint had said he would never use a life jacket again.
Nope, he said he never would.
So, as I said earlier, I think this is the first time we see a hard cut in the next scene. And we could see like the Orca is kind of like, listed on its side. It's waterlogged. There's steam coming out of the cabin, and Brody and Hooper are just look totally at the end of their tether. They're worn out, and then Quint comes out. He's buttoned his old jacket and his shirt and all up, ready for the occasion, and with 2 life vests, life jackets, and he throws one to Hooper, Chief. He throws the one to Chief, and he stands with his arms folded, and Richard Davis just looks livid. You know, he's livid that he feels livid that this man has got him into this situation.
I would be livid too because we were that close to land and then you drove away from it.
Yeah, and then even Brody, he's sitting just staring at the life jacket. He's just like, is this what it's came to? You know, we're going to be drifting out at sea here. This thing's just going to kill us. And Quint then asks Hooper, which is a very humble moment for Quint, because Hooper mentioned it earlier about I've got stuff on board that'll kill it. Quint then asks, Hooper, what exactly can you do with these things he is? Hooper takes a look and he says, I think I can pump 20 cc's of circulating nitrate into him if I can get close enough. And fair play to Quint, he's like, get this little needle through his skin. And Hooper's like, I can't do that. But if I get him close enough to this cage, I think I can hit him in the mouth of the eye. And Brody's he's fed up with the whole thing. He just throws the life vest at the cage and tells them a home truth, which comes to fruition. That shark will rip that cage to pieces. And of course, everybody's on edge at this stage. He turns and he screams at Brody, you got any better suggestions? And I love that transition.
Of them to them
John,
building the cage.
yeah, well, it shows you Brody as if it's his reaction to what Hooper just said. And next thing, the cage just comes in the frame, and then John Williams' music kicks in. You know, the hero theme. And then, of course, we have a montage of them building the cage. And what I like from here, this is like the finale to the movie, okay? From this stage, from when you see that orca listing. And what we have now is each character has their own personal interaction with the shark, right? Has their own confrontation with the shark, and how will they succeed? How will they survive? And it's kind of done, apart from Brody, it's kind of done on their own turf type thing, right? So you've got Hooper now entering his cage to face the shark with his gear, okay? And we're going to see if he succeeds. But what I also like about this scene as well, of when they're putting the cage together, all 3 of them are working together to get out of this hole that they found themselves in. But you also see the scuba tank again. I love how it's sitting on the table in the orca, and it's like the camera kind of fixates on it for like a few seconds.
That's to let you know, like, that's going to be important.
Yeah, but it's just to remind you, because it's been so long since you've seen it. There was a wee part earlier in the movie which I forgot to mention, was like when they do tie the ropes onto the orca and the shark puts the orca on its side. The scuba tanks are now behind the bridge, the ladders to the bridge, and they kind of hit against it. And Brody this time, because he's learned his lesson, it shows that he remembers. He jumps up and he grabs the scuba tanks to make sure they don't fall over. So even when he's lifting the stuff off at the table, he's very careful around it, okay? So it's just reminding the audience, yeah, remember this? And why does he have to with him anyway? Well, we have to tell the story. Maybe somebody else wanted to go in the cage, or maybe Hooper thought he'd be in the cage that long and he needed to.
Okay. You always want to have a backup just in case the other one doesn't work or is a flaw in it.
That's true.
You know?
100%. That's true.
Remember, Brody had a second pair of glasses packed for him. Very smart.
Yeah, and he got a pair knocked off him with a barrel knocked, so he didn't go for the other pair.
Yeah, he just said,
kept them off.
Yeah, it's like, I'll just leave him off now at this point. I don't really need him out here anyway. The shark's big enough.
Yeah, glasses, yeah. Remember Bad Hat Harry? Glasses, yeah. Always very past remarkable as Harry.
I hate Harry.
Yeah, you know he's in Jaws too.
Is he? I don't remember him in Jaws too. I mean, that makes sense. I mean, he lives in the town.
He's the guy. Eventually, we have to do like a rewind episode of Jaws too. He's the guy that when they bring the picture in, he's the one that goes seaweed.
Yeah, because he's just the worst person in that town.
Yeah, Mr. Magoo. But yeah, so yeah, I love how they fixate on that anyway. So and then Hooper then is in his wetsuit, he's in the cage, and I just like how there's no dialogue from Quentin and Brody at this stage, and Hooper's in the cage, and I love how you see Quentin like watching out, looking across to see if he can see the barrels anywhere, and Brody's like, he forgets to take his glasses off, and Brody hits him, and he takes his glasses off, and he's like, I got no spit.
Yeah.
Scared. He's like, try and keep him off me, tell him lower. He's like, okay, I'm ready. So then they lower him down, and there he goes into the deep blue sea. You see the kid slowly sliding down into the water. Just as he's down, the next minute the shark comes, swimming by. I love that quick shot as well, John, of Brody and Quint watching the three barrels pass them. And then it cuts to Hooper, and it's the first time you really see like almost the full scale shark, and you see it kind of it's obstructed by the cage and the murky water, but you see it kind of like pass by, and you see the size of this thing, and even Hooper kind of like is that big, even though he's confined inside a cage, he's pinned back in the cage.
Yeah, because it's natural. He doesn't know what to do.
Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, it goes, swims past, disappears. Dreyfuss puts the spear out, ready for it, and it creeps up behind him, smashes into the back of the cage. He drops the spear, just like he dropped the tooth, so bloody gullible. And it lands on the seabed, and he's trying to open the bottom hatch. I don't know whether or not there is supposed to be a bottom hatch, or he's just trying to open it. Maybe there is supposed to be, but whoever tightened that done it the wrong way. People putting the cage together didn't know how to. But he can't get out, and the next thing the shark attacks the cage. This thing's just firing its snout into the cage. The head's that big, it can't even get into the cage. And that's actually it's kind of saved Dreyfuss, because every time it hits the cage, he's swirling back with the cage. And I love the music in this scene as well. To me, it's very Bernard Herrmann-esque. It reminds me of the scene in Psycho when Norman Bates is coming up to the mansion, and it's Vera Miles is hiding from him, and she runs down into the cellar. I almost feel as if, I think I mentioned this in our Psycho episode, that this part of the music is a homage to Bernard Herrmann.
Oh, okay. Which makes sense, because the movie itself is kind of, Steven Spielberg took a lot from Alfred Hitchcock.
Yeah, with the suspense and stuff like that. Yeah, definitely. I was going to say, so yeah, Dreyfuss takes his diver's knife out and starts stabbing the shark on the snout. Up above the water, Quentin Brody knows something's going on. Brody's like, pull him up now, pull him up. And in the meantime, the top hatch opens, and of course, Hooper's able to swim out and swim away and hide down in the seaweed on the seabed. What did you think of that?
I mean, I think he got really lucky. I mean, I don't know. I thought he got, like, the shark should have killed him, but it worked out well for him that he came out the top. I guess the shark didn't notice it. But yeah, to go high, I'm surprised that the shark doesn't realize where he is. But hey, I guess we got the other two that he's got to go after.
I think the shark is just too involved with the cage to notice.
That's possible too. I mean, this thing is probably like ripping off the cage and doesn't even realize he's out of there.
Yeah, exactly. It's too involved with the cage. Dreyfuss swims away and hides, and I down there, and I always remember like that sticking with me when I was a kid, him hiding down there. Just the seabed and the seaweed, and his wee goggles just hiding behind. But in the book, the shark kills him. So
this is a way not to make sure he doesn't die. Although it would have made sense for him to die.
Yeah. Well, it was in the original script, but what actually happened was that Ron and Valerie Taylor, when they were filming the live scenes for the movie with real great white sharks, which are in that scene, there's certain shots are real great whites. They had a small cage with a small person in the cage to make the shark look bigger, because the sharks they had down there, it was filmed off South Australia. The sharks they had down there between 12 and 15, 16 feet. So they thought, if we get a small person in a small cage, the shark will look bigger. But what actually happened was, before the actual small person get into the cage, this big shark came in and got its nose caught in the bridle and get tangled up. And when sharks get caught like that, they go crazy, go nuts, start thrashing about and rip the cage apart. So that shark in the movie you see at the end of that scene, destroying that cage, that's the real shark. That's destroying the mini cage. So because the small person, or I say it was a dummy as well, we're going to use a dummy as well, but because there was nothing in the cage when this happened, they decided to rewrite the end of the movie that Dreyfuss or Hooper survives. But of course, that's, as David Brown says, is a lovely Spielbergian touch at the end when he pops out of the water.
It's a nice, I mean, I wouldn't want to not have that moment. It wouldn't have been the same if Brody swam back alone.
Exactly. And that's what happens in the book. And not only that, what happens in the book is that the shark breaches the water with Hooper in his mouth. And Quint tells Brody to shoot the bastard. And Brody takes aim, or he doesn't look, or he fires the gun or whatever, and it hits Hooper in the neck.
Ooh,
So when you talk about the book being dark, that's pretty fucking dark.
that wouldn't have worked in this. Might have got the R rating.
Yeah, could you imagine them? But yeah, it destroys the cage, and of course, it swims off, and Quint and Brody struggle to pull the cage up. And this the orca is like on its last legs, really, isn't it? You know, you see all the damage and destruction the inside the boat. That it's listening to the left while they're pulling the cage up. You can see the you know, there's water inside the decks, and part of it gives way, but they're hook it up, and they eventually pull the cage up. And it's like Brody's giving direction at this stage, so it's no longer, you know, Quint's calling the shots. You know, they're all working together here. This is life or death. Really is life or death. They're working together to try and solve this issue, save their lives. And they pull the cage up, and Brody's like, it's coming. And when it comes up, the cage is like totally destroyed. Brody can't even look at it. He must feel ill. He turns.
Yeah, he does. You can see he's like distraught. He turns away.
He turns away. He can't even look at it, thinking that Hooper's gone. The shark's got him. Quint drops the cage, but Quint senses something. Quint knows something's coming. It's really strange. I love that, the way he just turns and looks out into the sea. And I think that is also from the book too, where it says that this happens in the book, where the shark breaches the water and lands on the back of the stern. Now, I think that in the book it says something about that Quint senses it or has a premonition or something. I must double check that. Don't quote me on that.
Mhm.
But next thing is, I love that shot. Actually, people talk about how fake the shark looks in the movie, and I get it. This movie came out 50 years ago, but I still love it. I love the mechanical shark for what it is. I love that it's got character. I don't care. I love the flaws. I love the fact that sometimes it does look a bit fake and it kind of like bends in places. I just marvel that they were able to create this 51 years ago and film it live and do these stunts live. They film the shark from under the water, passing the camera, coming out of the water, the mouth opening, cutting to it, landing on the stern, and Brody and Quint kind of like startled. And you see them, can't believe it. Brody runs into the cabin. Quint just instinctively follows him. I think that Brody's running in there out of fear. They don't know what to do. And Quint just follows him. And of course, the boat starts quickly sinking. Water washes up onto the decks. And luckily for Brody, when he slips and falls over, he hangs on to the wheel. Good grip for him to hang on to. Quint hangs onto the table. And I love how just things are just falling out of the cupboards and all. You know, I just love all the debris that's around it, you know, and it's all falling down. And of course, you know, it's very ironic that the tank that eventually kills the shark is the catalyst for killing Quint, because that lands in his hand. That would hurt. And as I say, he lets go, grabs Brody's hand. I mentioned earlier about the gloves. I always used to think, if he wasn't wearing them gloves, would he have slipped out of Brody's grip?
Probably, right?
I always think that wearing the gloves is what made him slip out of his grip.
I don't know. I think it was inevitable, his death here.
Brutal. Yeah,
it's brutal too.
Yeah, and like, do you know what I love, John, as well? I just love how Spielberg prolongs it. You know, he builds up the suspense and the tension. You're anticipating them. You know, as I say, watching it. Yeah, I've watched this movie too many times. You know what's coming. But maybe as a first-time viewer, you're going, no, don't. It's not going to get him, is it? It's not going to get him. And how he kind of tries to fight it off with his legs first. And the shark kind of turns and bites his legs first. Bites him just at the joint of his legs. That would be so painful. And I think Robert Shaw sells it so well.
He does. And it's brutal. And like, you know, this big, strong man. But when the shark gets a hold of him, like he said earlier, you know, you scream. And the scream is so realistic. Like the pain is like, you know, no matter how tough you are, when that happens, just no. Why do you care?
No, but I actually think, John, I think that I don't want to have a dig at my favorite movie of all time, but I think that it's Shaw that sells this scene. I mean, you know, you can look at that shark and maybe say it doesn't look real. It's too fake. But he really sells this so well. Selling his death so well that it's still horrifying to watch to this day. That's what I think. I think that's what sells it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it is the horrific look on his face, the blood coming out of his mouth, and the blood in the water. I think, but you're right. I think the angle also that they keep it at, like almost like a first person when he's going into the shark's mouth, that helps.
Yeah, so I love as well as that when the shark starts thrashing Quint about, that he grabs the machete. You know, he fights to the end. You know, and he starts stabbing the shark under the eye with the machete. And as I say, Spielberg prolongs it, and to the point where like Shader loses his grip from the wheel, and I love how he slides down towards it and stops himself from going through the door. But he's like totally horrified. He actually has to turn away. He can't watch any longer, so he can't. And then so I've to the point where Quint actually is like spitting up blood, and for such a big character and such a loud character, to all of a sudden then go quiet. And I love how you actually see the shark drag him under the water. I love how you see like his literal death, where you hear his last breath. You hear his last breath, and his arms kind of go limp, and then you see the shark dragging him under the water.
It is horrific. It's a horrific death, and yeah, he's just gone. That's it. Now he's just gonna go eat him.
Yep. Shake him apart, like he said in his speech.
Mhm.
And then of course then we see the orca starting to sink and all that blood in the water, and then the door closes, which is illogical, but it closes. And Brody's trapped. This is Brody's worst nightmare. He thinks Hooper's dead, but he's gone. Quint, the man who was supposed to catch the shark, is dead. Brody doesn't like water. He hates drowning. And plus, I'm sure he's terrified of this shark. And now he's trapped inside the cabin of the orca while it's sinking. And as I said, so we've had Hooper have his face-to-face with the shark. He failed. Quint has now had his face-to-face with the shark. He's failed. And now we have Brody. This is his time against the shark. And it crashes through the cabin of the orca. And I love that shot, mate, as him run across and the shark coming out. And when the shark sticks his head out of the water and shakes, and you see all the pieces of Quint hanging from the shark's teeth.
I know. It's great. This is a great moment, this whole thing, because it's finally Brody coming to face his fears. Everything's been building to this moment for him.
But he's kind of like, he's still terrified at this
Well,
stage.
I mean,
He's
who wouldn't
not,
be?
yeah, exactly. And he's not the hero he will become yet, but he is using any resource he can to try and get out of this situation. I think part of it's kind of instinctive, because all of a sudden there's that scuba tank floating in front of him. And I feel like I believe that he uses the scuba tank just to knock the shark away from him at first, because he hits it in the snout. But I also think that is also as well to kind of like create this believability that the tank will explode as well, because the tank has been knocked about and all the rest a few times during the movie. So he hits it in the snout, so it backs off, and then he throws it into its mouth. I don't know whether or not he was trying to hit it again. In the context of the movie, or maybe of the filmmaking, they're like, yeah, throw it in its mouth. But, maybe the context of the movie, maybe he was trying to hit it again. I don't know, but he throws it anyway, and it lands into the shark's mouth. Because how does he know it's going to stay there? Do you know what I mean? I don't know. But I don't know what he's trying at that stage. You could theorize that maybe he was hoping the shark would bite down on it or something. Yeah, you could throw all that out there. But of course, he climbs out then of the cabin through the front window, and the boat is sinking. You can really see how fast it's sinking now. And I love this piece of music in the movie. This whole end sad piece of music, because this is it now. Brody's looking around for the shark, and there you can just see the tip of the fin, and then you hear the music. Dun, 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 dun. And I love how he's on the bridge, and the water's just creeping up the bridge, and he's lifting the M1 Garand, the rifle. He's checking the bullets, he's cocking it, so he is, and then he's got the harpoon, and as he starts making his way up the mast, and it's just okay, get away from the water, of course, get away from the shark, just get to the highest point, and he climbs up, and that music is amazing in this scene. When he gets to the top, I love how the music kind of quietens down, and it has that launch shot, and it's just like a silhouette of the orca sinking, and you can see him sitting with his leg dangling, and you can see the island as well in the background. And I say, John Williams, genius with his music. The music's kind of like, slowly playing in the background, and all of a sudden that shark just comes up below him out of nowhere, and I'm sure that's terrifying. And I think, again, like all the actors in this movie, like Shaw on his death, Shader sells this so well, because when that comes up from below him, the way he kind of like pulls himself up like that, away from it, the surprise and the shock and the horror on his face. And of course, then he uses the harpoon to stab the shark on the nose. Again, great music. Goes back to Psycho as well. And you see the shark bleeding, but it's not giving up, but eventually it does. I think Brody hits it in the mouth and it snaps. That kind of harpoon snaps, and the shark pulls himself under the water. And I love this. Brody just positioning himself on the mast. This is one of my favorite kind of like, what could you say? One of my favorite images from this movie. is like Roy Scheider on that mast with that rifle, holding that rifle. You know, it's always
Yeah.
one of my it's always one of my favorite memories, John, when I was a kid and from watching Jaws. That always stuck with me. Just even what he's wearing, you know, the police belt and the jeans and the black t-shirt and holding the rifle and just, you know, that serious look on his face. But I love how he's like mumbling to himself, okay, show me the tank. Show me the tank. It'll blow up. But then you can see the shark kind of its tail wagging, moving in the background. You know, it's not static. You can actually see it moving. And then when it cuts to that, you see the mask just slowly moving towards the water. And when it cuts to that scene of the shark just racing towards the camera with the scuba tank in its mouth, and it's chewing and it's chewing and it's chewing. It's such a classic part of the movie. And, you know, he's only got what? I don't know how many bullets, 7 or 8 bullets to succeed. And it's almost like he's just firing in the dark, you know, because it's like the shark's coming towards him and he fires that first one. I love how it hits the water and you just see the water just splurt up, you know?
Yeah, I love that you can see the bullets go through the water like that, like not actually hit the like that we know it missed. You know, of course, this is how you build tension. He misses a bunch of times as the shark is getting closer.
Yeah, and there's one actually you see the shark kind of moving, and there's one from the outside. You see it hit the water, and then under the water, going on past the shark's jaw. And I heard that was obviously filmed in I think it was filmed in the same tank, the MGM tank that the cage attack scene was filmed in. And I heard that was Spielberg throwing stones.
That makes sense. I mean,
He's just
hey, you
throwing
got to make it
stones.
work.
Yeah, that's what I heard. And so yeah, and then of course Brody's getting more desperate as that big shark's coming towards him. And I love how the John Williams music is just escalating and escalating, and it's going bah, 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 bah. And yeah, and obviously it's penultimate shot. Do you see how it hits the shark just under the eye?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the blood fires out of it.
Which, you know, that's what would happen, which is, again, good squib work.
But it's great attention to detail, you know, that they're like, we're going to do this. It'll go here, it'll go where, because I say at once, did you see it? You kind of see the bullet passing the shark and the shark kind of moving to the side as if it's, you know, avoiding them, which, you know, is highly unlikely. But that one there, it hits it under the eye, and that's just as soon as it's coming close to Brody, that's when he's like, "Smile, you son of a bitch." That's when he presses, squeezes that final. Well, I don't know if it's the last bullet, the 6 or 7, but it's the last one he can fire off before the shark gets him, in my opinion. And that's the money shot. That's the one that hits that tank and boom up into the air. And I love that shot as well. No, well, first of all, I love how it explodes. You see it from underwater, and then you just see Brody's like doesn't know what has happened. It's like all this water's hit him in the face, and you see him looking, and you see all the chunks of shark falling into the water, and there's just this big bloody mess in the water, and he just screams out in joy. And I think that's such great acting from Roy Scheider. It's just such a natural reaction I think someone would have to have just won the lottery. I've just, you know, final shot, last bullet, I've just saved my life.
That's it. I'm not going to die now.
Yeah. And then as those pieces of shark go into the water, which, by the way, that was a spur head that they had. Yeah, so that was a spur, just the head that they had. I don't know why it was a spur. I can't remember why, but it was in the boathouse where they kept the sharks. It's called Shark City. And they just packed it with dynamite and squid. I think it was squid. And yeah, blew it up. Oh, and red paint. I think it was red paint.
Red paint would make sense. You needed some blood in there.
Yep, so they did. And that wonderful shot, John, of the carcass of the shark, you know, sinking to the bottom of the ocean with all the cloudy red blood coming up out of the water. And you almost, with the John Williams music, you almost feel sorry for the shark.
Yeah, they make you feel a little bit bad for. I mean, listen, he doesn't know any better. He's just doing what he does.
Yeah, I feel sorry for him. And then, do you know what you hear in the background?
What?
You hear a roar. Did that notice? You can hear a roar.
Well, you hear a roar. I assume that's supposed to be the shark.
Well, there's a roar in the background. It goes, ooh, right?
Yeah.
And that is a dinosaur roar.
Is it really?
Yep. And it was used at the end of Duel when the truck goes over the edge of the cliff. Spielberg put it in Jaws when the shark's sinking at the bottom of the water to show that there was a kinship between the two movies.
I like that. I mean, they are very similar structured movies. It's like when we were talking in our Spielberg episode, I felt like Duel is like the precursor to Jaws, whereas Sugarland's like the precursor to Close Encounters.
Yeah, and if you watch Duel, when that truck goes off the side of the cliff, and all the kind of like the dust and all gathers up from it crashing, and you see the back end of the truck kind of flip over in slow motion. It's almost the same motion of the shark and its fins rolling over in the cloud of blood. So in the original screenplay for Duel, the truck exploded, but they decided not to do that, and just the dust and all coming up. So there you go. So he done that intentionally. You thought I was joking when I said there's a roar and it's a dinosaur.
I'm thinking something Jurassic Park related.
Oh, it's many years later. There
Yeah.
is a Jaws Easter egg in Jurassic Park though, a big one.
Is there?
Yep. So when Dennis Nerdry is sitting, I'm trying to remember now. It's been a while since I've seen Jurassic Park, a couple of years. I was going to watch it the other night too. I was in the mood. I'll have to give it a watch. But so basically, it's when they all go on the tour and they're talking about the storm coming in, I think. And Dennis Nerdry's sitting at his desk, and John Hammond goes to ask him a question. I think it's before you know who Dennis Nerdry is, because remember at the start it shows him collecting the shaving foam canister.
Yeah,
right?
where he's gonna put the embryos in.
Yeah, but I think it's the first time you see him, and he asks him, Dennis, what's going on with the computers? And he turns and he goes, I can't work with this, blah, blah, blah. Well, there's a monitor down to the bottom left of Dennis Nerdry. I know what's on the monitor.
What?
Jaws.
Oh, really?
It's the scene where Roy Shader's throwing the chum over the edge and the shark comes out of the water. And then you can
Huh.
see it. You can see it again. I think you can see like it's later on the scene where the shark's passing the bow of the boat. The wee
I gotta
monitor
pay
in the
attention
corner.
to that now.
You watch that next time you watch Jurassic Park. So that's much later, but there was a kinship between Jaws and Duel, and that's why Spielberg done that. And of course, then we cut back to Brody. He thinks he's the lone survivor, lying on the top of the mast. And of course, we see the bubbles, we see Richard Dreyfuss, Hooper come out of the water, and it's a great moment to see that Hooper survived. And I'm actually sad that Quint died. It had to be done, but I'm sad about it.
I'm sad about it too, but you need to have at least one of the big three characters die. And if it wasn't going to be Hooper, you got to have it be Quint.
Yeah. Well, Quint dies in the book as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm just saying in the film, we got to have at least one of we got to have one major character die. I like that Hooper comes back. I love that the two of them swimming back. It sends us home happy. It would have just not been the same if they didn't chat with each other.
Yeah, no, listen, I actually agree with you. I think it's one of those things that was kind of like in Quint's fate that it had to be done. And in the book, he actually drowns. But in the film, they thought it was right that he actually was bitten and eaten. So I actually
think so. I think it's better to have the thing that he's spent his entire career in life essentially hunting be the thing that hunts him and kills him.
And that's
probably,
it's
poetic.
Yeah, it's poetic, and that's probably his biggest fear. His biggest fear is being eaten by a shark. He describes it a few times in the film.
I've always figured that my biggest fear is flying. I don't like being on planes. I always figured I'll probably die in a plane crash. It just makes sense.
Oh, Joe, don't be saying that.
Listen, if it happens, I want you to tell people. I've told Faith, be like, he always expected that to be the way he died.
Yes, Final Destination, the plane's gonna get me. But
no, that plane in the first Final Destination did crash off. That's based on a plane that did crash off of Long Island.
But the first one, did you say?
Yeah, that is a real plane crash that happened out of JFK over Long Island. If you go to a beach not too far from where I live, about 10 minutes away, there's a memorial for TWA Flight 800, which is the plane that's based off of the first incident in Final Destination.
Jesus, right, okay. Listen, I seen Final Destination years ago. I can't even remember it. I think I seen the first one. That was it, like 20 years ago or something. But yeah, it's I'm not a keen flyer myself, John, to be honest with you. But no, listen, you're gonna die an old man in your bed, okay? Thinking about all the great podcasts we done. I'll be dead. I'll be dead before you, so don't be worrying about that.
Hopefully you die 10 years before me, and that way I can live on your legacy for another 10 years till I go.
Why 10 years? Why not like a year?
Well, you are 10 years older than me, so I'd hope that we get to live to be the same age. You shouldn't have more time here than me.
Fair enough. That did cross my mind, but I just thought, why 10?
Don't pull over on the side of the road at 51 years old. That's all I worry about.
Oh God, no! Listen, I don't know. I felt like I was going to die the other week after drinking. But
you just hope it, man. Like you're praying for it, then.
Yeah. Oh my God. But here, anyway. So yes, Dreyfuss. Let's get this finished. Dreyfuss swims over to Brody, and I love the look on Brody's face when he turns and he looks and he smiles. He can't believe it. He's like, oh, and then Dreyfus comes over laughing. You know, he doesn't even ask him what happened. I think he assumes he knows. And but I like this we moment here where he's like Quint. And all Brody is like the smile drops on Brody's face, and he's just like that's all he has to say. Like, and make it shark at him. And I love how they turn around. They're like, "We get in on those," and then it cuts the final scene, and they're using. I always used to think it was a piece of the shark they're on.
Yeah, I always thought it was either the shark, or like just a piece of wood.
Yeah, I don't know why. I just always thought it was a piece of the shark.
Would have been nice
because a piece of the shark would still like if they used the barrels. Like the barrels maybe have a piece of the shark still attached to it. So, but maybe it is just a piece of wood. But looking at the barrels, they could have took the barrels off the bow of the Orca anyway and used them. But I think it's one barrel each on either side. And I love this wee epilogue because that's what I used to love about movies back in this day. Mate, you don't need to go to the island and see what happens next. You know what I mean? You don't need him to meet up with Ellen and her to be waiting with open arms and him to run and the hug and for him to go to the mirror and say, I killed the shark and you know, and all this bullshit. You know, that's it. The movie's over. The shark's dead, and that's the movie's over. But I do love their wee bit of back and forward about, you know, do you think it takes with us? And he's like, keep kicking. And he's like, you know, what day is this? You know, Wednesday or Tuesday, I think. You know, they don't even know what day it is. The last week has just been so mental for them. And then I love how he says these two final lines are absolutely brilliant. And I can't remember who said it. Somebody said that they believe that this final line should be included in one of the best lanes of all time, or final lanes of a movie of all time. Can't remember who said it, but I think they have a point. But then again, I'm biased, where he says to him, I
used to hate the water. I can't imagine why.
Yeah, I actually do think that's a great ending line. I can't imagine why after what they just went through. It is a great ending line.
Yeah, and the fact that Brody says as well, John, he says, I used to hate the water. He's over his fear. I used to hate the water.
Well, nothing worse could ever happen. Or so you think. But that's what I think kind of always hurts a little bit, Jaws, too, is that, you know, it kind of happens again. If it just ended here, like, that's a perfect way to end the movie.
Well, look, Jaws has been accused of being like, it never needed a sequel. Me, as a diehard Jaws 2 fan, I love Jaws 2. I explained it on our Jaws 2 episode if anybody wants to go back and watch it. Jaws 2, for me, I love how it continues the story and it does evolve Brody's character at a certain part. He's not afraid of the water. He's cautious of the water. We'll probably save that maybe for another Jaws 2 episode at some stage. I don't want to go too far in it, but what I do want to say is that I also love as well back in this day when it cuts to the ending shot of the movie of that beach and the titles coming up and just how it just doesn't fade to black. How, you know, you've got the camera just keeps rolling and the titles roll, the end credits roll. John Williams' music is so touching. If I die, I want this played at my funeral.
I think we can make that happen.
Yeah, I do. I've thought of this for the last 30 years. If I ever die, these ending titles I want played at my funeral as my coffin is leaving the church.
I'll have it insured. I'll make sure that happens. I'll make sure everyone knows, and I'll show them the proof.
Make sure it happens, John, because I haven't got it in my will. Okay, so and also, did you notice that you can see Hooper and Brody on the water kicking the shore?
Oh yeah, you can.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
so yeah. And by the time the credits end and then John Williams' music is ending, they're on the beach.
Yeah, I agree.
That's the end of our story.
I agree. This is something that I wish they still did in movies. They just always feel like they need to like wrap everything up with a bow. I actually forgot. I just recently, not to compare this to Jaws, but I watched Top Gun and I thought that the movie ended when they said that you could be my wingman. No, you could be mine. I thought it ended right there. I forgot that there's a post scene where we have to wrap up the love story. I'm like, didn't need that. Should have just ended on the ship.
Yeah, and you can say it's bad rating I wouldn't say it's bad rating, but I just don't need. I feel as if I don't need closure on anything else. You know what I mean? I don't need to see the mirror have us come up, and so I don't need to see Alan greet Brody, as I said earlier. And I'm not saying anybody does. I'm just making a point of just like I like how the shark's dead. We've wrapped up this story. This is all we need. We don't need anything else. And I like how our imaginations can kind of, if you're a massive fan like me, I can play that in my imagination. Just as there's other scenes in the movie, as I explained in part one, that I can use my imagination about how certain characters came to certain conclusions and ended up in the situations that they're in. And I think that's one of the best things you can do in storytelling is that, I remember, David Chase used to say that a lot about The Sopranos. When certain storylines didn't resolve or didn't go anywhere, he says, that's life.
Yeah. Not everything gets a conclusion.
Yeah, not everything's wrapped up in a bow. And I also like that about Jaws 2 as well. And I think I touched on it in our podcast as well, is the fact that in Jaws 2, when we know that the kids have went out and that there's a shark, that it's actually Len Peterson that takes the heat. And I think a lot of people would like to see the Mirror take the heat for that. But there was filming reasons why Murray Hamilton wasn't there. But I actually like the fact that it's Len Peterson and it's not the Mirror.
I like that too. Good point. I forgot about that.
So as I say, just the finish up on this, just that final note from John Williams' score just keeps it a bit ominous. You're just kind of going, oh, what's out there? What is out there in the ocean?
Yeah, it's a great way. It's a great way to wrap up a beautiful, beautiful film. I know this is your favorite film of all time, so I'm going to let you get the last word in before we get out of here. But I just want to say, the journey on talking about Jaws and watching it over these last few weeks really has proven to me that this is just one of the greatest films ever made. Maybe I don't have the love that you have for it, but my admiration for it cannot be matched. There's just so many, like you said, like the behind the scenes, the making of this movie, to end up with a masterpiece when it takes, when everything seems like it's going wrong, just like it does for the guys on the ship, to still end up winning at the very end. It speaks to the film itself, the quality of it, and also speaks to the filmmaker, Steven Spielberg. There's a reason why people still, all these years later, talk about Jaws and are still talking about Steven Spielberg.
I always talk about an honesty to movies, and there's a real honesty to Jaws, I think. And I also think that despite all the continuity errors and the flaws, that because it's so honest and so well crafted, you can overlook that. And it not only that, it's a really well made, a well told story as well. It's timeless. It's set in the 70s, but the movie's timeless. It speaks to every generation. Every generation, this movie throws up new fans, and it's up to people like me and you too, John, with your podcast, to continue that.
We have to let the world know how good this movie is. That's our job. And I think that over the course of the last couple of weeks, we've covered Jaws. Really, about 6 hours worth of covering a 2-hour movie. So I think we've left no stone unturned when it comes to Jaws.
Well, look, I just want to say thanks to everybody who's tuned in and lasted this long and listened to me ramble on about Jaws. I just feel as if that we won't do this for every movie. Maybe, we'll do it for, certain anniversaries and real special movies, go really into it, because we do try and do the movie from start to finish. Now it's our new format, but we don't spend as much time as we did on Jaws, and I just hope it wasn't too much for people to listen to me go on. But I could actually go a lot more in depth into each scene and about the making of and about all other things and symbolism and all, but don't want to bore people with that. So as I say, I just appreciate people that have actually tuned in and listened to these two really bumper episodes that we've done on Jaws. I think it deserves it. As I said in the Spielberg episode, John, it's half a century old. It's 50 years old, and I just hope people enjoyed listening to these two podcasts that we've done.
I hope so too, because there aren't many movies that do deserve this full treatment. Although I'm thinking about it while we're doing it, like I could do this on every movie we do, so it kind of gets tough to rein in what we want to talk about and what we don't want to talk about. Not every movie's obviously going to have like this. We did Commando not too long ago before this. Commando's a very different movie where you can gloss over stuff, but even with the simple shot in this movie of a nighttime transition shot can be something special that you want to talk about a little bit more.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, to let people know, even though we just finished up this, we're going to be moving on to another thing. It won't be Steven Spielberg related this time, but we are going to be talking about a 1990s, somewhat of a classic in a lot of people's eyes. And what film is that?
Yes, John, we're going to go back to the Old West, and we're going to visit Tombstone. And, honestly, sad timing on it. We'll be talking about one of, I think, Val Kilmer's greatest performance. Actually, we have 2 Val Kilmer films lined up this summer. I didn't even realize. Yeah, we had actually had these lined up before
yeah,
Val passed away. So, yeah.
Yeah, kind of didn't plan it that way. I don't think we're the reason he died, but it is weird that it worked out that way.
Maybe he heard we were going to do them. But
He's like, I
I'm
want
out.
to get front row seats.
Yeah, I'm out for this one.
But anyway, guys, thank you so much for being here with us. Let us know what you guys thought of this format for the two-parter. Like, did you like it? Would you like to see us do more of these? Because, we had a great time making these. We hope you enjoyed our season of Spielberg, because in the start of season 3 for the Let's Talk Movies podcast, leave all those comments in the comment section below. We really appreciate that. And we'll see you guys we'll see you guys next week for Tombstone.